Tonight we are sailing beyond the familiar edges of the Greek world, where the sea stretches dark and silver beneath a field of stars, and the islands ahead seem less like places on a map than fragments of an older dream. You have already travelled far with Odysseus. Troy lies behind you now, its towers broken, its fires faded into memory. The long war is over, yet peace has not followed. Instead, you drift westward through a world of hidden coves, unfamiliar shores, restless gods, and choices whose consequences are not yet visible. Before you go farther, if these quiet journeys into the ancient world help you rest, you can gently like the video and subscribe, and if you wish, leave your location and local time in the comments, so that somewhere in the darkness you may imagine other listeners entering the same story beneath different skies. Now the sea wind cools your face. The oars move slowly, and ahead of you, beyond the black water, waits the coast of the Cyclops. You do not know that yet. You only know that the morning has come after another uneasy night at sea. The ships rise and fall on long grey swells. Salt dries on the ropes. The wooden hull creaks with every motion. Around you, exhausted men sit beneath patched sails, their hands rough from rowing, their eyes hollow from years of war and months of wandering. You can smell wet timber, bronze, old wool, and the faint smoke of a cooking fire sheltered inside a clay brazier. Odysseus stands near the prow. He is not the largest man among you. He is not the strongest. But he watches. That is what separates him from so many heroes. He watches the colour of the water, he studies the birds, he notices how the wind turns against the sail. He looks toward the horizon as though every cloud might hide either salvation or ruin. And perhaps, after everything you have already survived, you understand why. Not long ago, you passed through the land of the Lotus Eaters, where forgetfulness itself became a danger. There, some of your companions tasted the strange lotus and lost their desire for home. They wanted nothing more than to remain beneath a gentle sun, surrendering memory, responsibility, and the painful road back to Ithaca. Odysseus dragged them away. The ships returned to the sea, but a question remained. What if the greatest danger on the journey home was not death? What if it was forgetting why you wish to return? Now another coast appears. At first it is only a shadow. Then cliffs rise from the morning haze. Beyond them lie green slopes, dark woodland, and high ground touched by thin mountain mist. The place looks peaceful, almost too peaceful. No harbour walls greet you. No temple roof shines in the distance. No columns rise above the hills. You hear no bronze bells from livestock enclosures, no market cries, no hammering from shipyards. There are no cultivated fields that you can see, no vineyard terraces, no sacred grove marked by ribbons, only wild land. For an ancient Greek traveller, that silence would mean something. The civilized world was not simply a place where people lived. It was a place ordered by customs. Fields were divided, shrines stood beside roads, sacrifices were made, guests were welcomed, laws were remembered. Where those signs disappeared, uncertainty began. You sail closer. The shoreline curves around a sheltered island lying just offshore from a larger land beyond it. The island is rich with trees and pasture. Wild goats move among the rocks in such numbers that even the tired men begin to smile. Food, fresh meat, a place to rest. The ships are guided toward the shore. Keels scrape sand. Men jump into the shallows and pull the vessels higher. Cold water swirling around their calves. Soon fires are burning. Goats are hunted. Meat turns slowly above the flames. Fat hisses on hot stones. The scent of roasting flesh mixes with sea salt and crushed herbs beneath your feet. For the first time in many days, the crew eats without fear, and yet the silence remains. Across the narrow channel on the larger shore, smoke rises. Thin columns, distant. Human, perhaps. Odysseus sees them. You see him lift his head. Curiosity awakens in him. It is one of his greatest gifts, and one of his most dangerous flaws. You have watched this quality before. He cannot easily pass a mystery. He must understand it. Who lives there? Are they farmers, shepherds, warriors? Do they honour the gods? Do they welcome strangers? Or do they live outside the customs that bind the Greek world together? Some ancient storytellers imagine the Cyclops as beings from an earlier order of existence, creatures not entirely separated from the wildness of the earth itself. Other traditions would describe Cyclopes differently, sometimes as divine craftsmen working beneath mountains and volcanoes. The traditions do not always agree, but here, on this shore, the uncertainty is more powerful than any explanation. You do not yet know what kind of being waits beyond the water. That evening, the island grows quiet. The men lie near the fires. The ships rest against the sand. Above you, the stars sharpen as the last red light leaves the western sky. A distant sound carries across the channel. Perhaps it is a sheep, perhaps a goat, perhaps something larger. No one can be certain. Then you notice the moon. A thin cloud passes across it. For a moment, the silver light fades. This sea becomes black. Odysseus is still awake. He sits looking toward the distant smoke, and in the stillness, the memory of older warning seems to follow you. Travellers in Greek stories are often tested not on battlefields, but at doorways. A stranger arrives. A host must choose. Food, shelter, and respect may bring blessing. Cruelty may bring punishment. Zeus himself is believed to watch over the sacred customs of hospitality. Yet what happens when you enter a land where those customs mean nothing? That question hangs quietly over the dark water. By dawn, Odysseus will decide to cross, and once he does, the island behind you will begin to feel like the last safe place in the world. Morning comes quietly over the island. You wake beneath a pale sky with a taste of smoke and salt still lingering in your mouth. Around you, the surviving Greeks stir beside dying fires, pulling cloaks around shoulders chilled by the sea wind. The ships rest along the beach, their dark hulls shining with dew, while somewhere among the rocks a wild goat calls and another answers from farther inland. For a few peaceful moments, the war feels impossibly distant. You walk across grass wet beneath your sandals. The island seems almost strangely generous. Goats wander without shepherds. Trees grow without pruning. No stone walls divide one field from another. No farmer has carved terraces into the slopes. No road crosses the countryside toward a village or sanctuary. Everything appears abundant, and almost nothing appears human. For Greek listeners, this would have felt unusual. Farming was more than a way to find food. Cultivated earth suggested order, inheritance, cooperation, and respect for the gods who governed grain, rain, boundaries, and harvest. A landscape untouched by plough or vineyard could appear beautiful, but it could also suggest that you were approaching the margins of civilization. Odysseus notices this too. He stands near the water, looking across the channel toward the larger land. Smoke is rising there again. Now in daylight you can see more clearly. Beyond the opposite shore are high hills and rocky slopes. Caves open along the mountainsides. Flocks move like pale dots across distant pasture. There are signs of life, but still no city walls, harbour, marketplace, or temple visible from where you stand. Odysseus watches for a long time. Perhaps you already know what he's thinking. Someone lives there, and he intends to discover who. The crew has reason to be cautious. You have only recently escaped the Lotus Eaters, whose danger came disguised as comfort. No swords were raised there. No army attacked you. Instead, a sweet plant threatened to erase the desire for Ithaca itself. That memory has not faded. Some of the men glance toward the unfamiliar shore and would rather remain where the goats are plentiful and the ships are safe. But Odysseus is not satisfied. He orders most of the fleet to stay behind. Only his own ship will cross. You help push it from the sand. Cold water reaches your knees as the vessel begins to float. Men climb aboard. Oars are lowered, and the island slowly falls behind. The channel is not wide, yet the crossing feels strangely important. Each stroke carries you farther from safety. Water slips from the blades in silver streams. Gulls circle overhead. The scent of the cooking fires disappears. replaced by open salt air and the faint, earthy smell of the opposite coast. Then an omen passes above you. A dark seabird crosses the bow and turns inland. One sailor watches it uneasily. Ancient Greeks often searched the movement of birds, changes in weather, dreams, thunder, and unexpected sounds for signs of divine intention. Not every bird was a prophecy. Of course, even ancient observers disagreed over what such signs meant, yet aboard a ship far from home, uncertainty could transform the smallest event into a warning. Was the bird guiding you toward land, or warning you away? No one can know. Odysseus continues. That decision reveals something important about him. He does not merely want food, he wants knowledge. He wants to meet the inhabitants of this coast and discover what kind of people they are in the world of the Odyssey. One of the simplest ways to judge a society is by the treatment of strangers. Will a traveller be welcomed? Will bread and wine be offered before questions are asked? Will the host provide shelter? Will a departing guest receive a gift? These customs belong to Xenia, the sacred relationship between guest and host, watched over by Zeus. Odysseus expects that law to reach even here, but perhaps that expectation is itself dangerous. As the ship reaches the opposite shore, you jump down into shallow water and help pull it onto the stones. The land feels different beneath your feet. Rougher, higher. The cliffs cast long shadows across the beach. Odysseus chooses 12 companions to accompany him inland. The others remain with the vessel, guarding it and watching the sea. You follow the chosen group. The path climbs. Wild thyme releases its scent beneath your sandals. Wind moves through coarse grass. Somewhere above, sheep bells can be heard, though you still see no shepherd. Then Odysseus pauses. He carries something with him. A goatskin filled with dark wine. The wine was given to him by Maron, a priest of Apollo whom Odysseus protected during the violence at Ismarus. It is unusually strong, precious wine, the kind of gift whose value lies not merely in taste but in the relationship behind it. An earlier act of mercy has travelled with you across the sea. You cannot yet know why that matters. Perhaps Odysseus himself does not know, but myths often preserve such objects carefully. A bow, a ring, a sword, a cup, a jar of wine. Something carried quietly for many miles waits until destiny finally reveals its purpose. Ahead, the path bends around a rocky slope. There you see signs of enormous flocks. Hoofprints mark the earth. Dung lies drying beneath the sun. The smell of sheep grows stronger, and above the pasture, set into the stone of the hillside, waits a cave. Its entrance is enormous. Around it stand rough pens made from heavy stones. The men become quiet. You hear wind entering the darkness beyond the opening. Odysseus looks inside. No one appears to be home. Behind you, the sea glitters peacefully in the distance. You could still turn back, and perhaps some part of you already senses that you should. But Odysseus steps toward the cave, so you follow. You follow Odysseus toward the cave, leaving the glittering sea farther behind with every step. The afternoon is warm on the exposed hillside, but a cool breath comes from the cavern ahead. It carries the smell of sheep, damp stone, milk, and old smoke. Around the entrance, the ground has been pressed hard by countless hooves. Heavy stones form pens for lambs and young goats, arranged with a rough practicality that tells you someone has lived here for a long time. Yet whoever lives here is absent. Odysseus stops before the entrance. The 12 men gather around him. Behind you, the path descends toward the shore where the ship waits like a small dark shape beside the water. You can still hear waves breaking against the rocks. The sound is comforting because it reminds you that escape remains possible. One companion looks back toward it. Perhaps he's remembering the seabird that crossed the bow during the morning voyage. Was it guiding you here? Was it warning you? Among Greeks accustomed to watching birds for signs from the gods, such uncertainty could linger in the mind long after the wings disappeared. Odysseus looks into the cave. Curiosity has brought him this far. Now something deeper keeps him moving. He wants to know the inhabitant. In the heroic world from which you have come, A stranger approaching a household does not necessarily arrive as an enemy. You may enter unknown territory and hope to receive food, shelter, protection, and perhaps a gift before continuing your journey. In return, you respect the household that receives you. This relationship between stranger and host is more than politeness. It belongs to the sacred order of Xenia. Zeus watches over strangers, or so you have been taught. Odysseus has survived 10 years of war partly because he understands rules such as these. He knows alliances can begin with a meal. He knows reputation travels farther than ships. A generous host may become a friend whose descendants remain connected to yours generations later. But what if the being inside this cave recognizes no such obligation? The question remains unanswered as Odysseus steps inside. You enter after him. Immediately, the sunlight weakens. Your sandals move over cool stone. The air becomes moist, carrying the rich smell of animals and cheese. As your eyes adjust, the cavern reveals a strange abundance. Baskets overflow with cheeses. Containers hold whey. Large vessels stand ready for milking. Pens have been separated carefully, with younger animals kept according to age. This is not the den of a mindless beast. Someone works here. Someone understands animals, seasons, food, and routine. That realization makes the emptiness more unsettling. One of the men whispers that you should take what you need. There is enough cheese to fill your arms. There are lambs and kids in the pens. You could carry them down to the ship, push away from shore across the channel, and be among the rest of the fleet before the owner ever returns. Several men agree. Their proposal is sensible. They have learned to distrust unknown shores. But Odysseus refuses. He wants to stay. He wants to see the owner of the cave. And as Homer's surviving poem tells the story, he hopes to receive a guest gift. That small desire tells you much about the world you're inhabiting. A gift from a host is not simply property. It confirms that the stranger has been recognized and accepted. Odysseus wants to know whether the customs of civilized people exist even on this remote coast. Yet another interpretation survives. Perhaps he also wants recognition after 10 years before Troy. Odysseus is accustomed to entering places as a king and warrior. He has stood among famous men. His name has weight. Walking away unseen may be wise, but wisdom and pride do not always speak with the same voice. Historians continue to debate how closely the Cyclops episode reflects real fears surrounding early Greek seafaring and encounters with unfamiliar communities. Archaeological evidence from the Mediterranean reveals networks of travel and exchange stretching across distant coasts long before Homeric poetry reached its surviving form. Sailors carried goods, stories, rumours, and anxieties between islands. Beyond every known harbour waited another shore. And on another shore, customs might be different. You move deeper into the cave. Odysseus orders a fire lit. Dry wood catches. Flames rise. Torchlight trembles across the walls, revealing a ceiling so high that darkness still hides its upper reaches. You eat some cheese. You wait. Time passes slowly. Outside, daylight begins to soften. Then something changes. The animals become restless. A few sheep call from somewhere beyond the cave. You hear bells, slowly at first. Then nearer, a heavy rhythm follows. Footsteps, not human footsteps. Each one seems to settle into the earth. The men stop speaking. Odysseus turns toward the entrance. Through the fading light, a vast shape approaches with a flock moving around it. The seabird returns to your thoughts. So does the warning of the companions who wanted to leave. You could have been at sea by now, instead. You stand beside a fire in a stranger's cave while evening closes over the coast. The figure outside comes nearer. You hear branches scraping together as an enormous bundle of wood is carried toward the entrance. Then the load crashes onto the ground. The sound echoes through the cavern. Several men retreat instinctively into the shadows. And suddenly the question is no longer whether your unknown host will offer a gift. It is whether you have entered the home of something that considers you a guest at all. The footsteps stop outside. For a moment, nothing enters. You stand in the trembling glow of the fire with Odysseus and his companions, listening to the sheep gathering beyond the entrance. Their bells make small, uneven sounds against the deeper breathing of something enormous. Then a shadow crosses the fading daylight. Before you can understand its shape, a bundle of dry wood comes crashing into the cave. The impact echoes from wall to wall. Men recoil into the darkness. You hear Odysseus whisper for everyone to remain silent. Outside, the unknown shepherd begins directing his flock. The animals obey him. That detail is strangely unsettling. Whatever approaches is not some wandering monster without purpose. It has routines. It understands its animals. It returns at evening as shepherds have returned from pasture for generations. The sheep enter first. Their wool brushes against the stone. Hooves click softly across the floor, the smell of grass, warmer animals, and mountain air enters with them. Then the shepherd follows. Polyphemus. You have not yet heard his name, but later generations will know it well, in the firelight. His body seems almost part of the mountain itself. He is immense. Ancient art would eventually imagine Cyclops in different ways, and surviving traditions do not always agree about their appearance. Some become divine craftsmen associated with thunderbolts and volcanic fire. The being before you belongs to another tradition, a solitary pastoral giant living beyond ordinary human society, and at the center of his face is the feature that will define the memory of this night. One eye, it watches the cave beneath a heavy brow. The men retreat farther. Odysseus does not. Polyphemus turns toward the entrance and reaches for a massive stone lying nearby. You watch his hands close around it. Then he lifts. The stone moves. Its weight seems impossible. Later, Odysseus will remember that 22 strong wagons could scarcely move such a rock from the ground. Polyphemus handles it alone. The entrance disappears behind stone. Daylight vanishes. You are sealed inside. Now the earlier warning changes meaning when the companions urged Odysseus to take the cheeses and animals and return to the ship. Escape was easy. Now escape depends upon the creature standing between you and the sea. Polyphemus appears unconcerned by the strangers hidden in his cave. He begins his evening work. He sits and milks the ewes and goats. The sound is ordinary. Milk strikes the vessels in warm streams. Half is set aside for drinking, the rest is curdled for cheese. You watch from the shadows. The contrast is almost dreamlike. A being large enough to terrify warriors performs the quiet labour of a shepherd. Perhaps that contradiction explains part of the episode's enduring power. Polyphemus is not frightening because everything about him is alien. Some things about him are familiar. He tends animals. He makes food. He has a home. Yet the sacred customs expected within a home may mean nothing here. When his work is finished, he builds a fire. Flame spreads across the dry wood. The cavern brightens, and Polyphemus sees you. His single eye settles upon the Greeks. He speaks. His voice fills the cave. He asks who you are. Where have you sailed from? Are you merchants travelling for trade, or pirates wandering across the sea, risking your lives while bringing destruction to strangers? The question would have sounded familiar to ancient audiences. Mediterranean waters carried merchants, colonists, fishermen, raiders, and adventurers. And sometimes the difference between them depended upon who was telling the story. Odysseus steps forward. You can sense the men watching him. He does not immediately give his name. That restraint matters. Instead, he explains that you are Achaeans returning from Troy. The city has fallen. The Greeks have won. Yet storms and wandering have driven you from the intended road home. Odysseus invokes Zeus. You are strangers, he says. You come as suppliants. The gods honour the sacred rights of guests. The appeal is carefully chosen. In a Greek household, the stranger could stand beneath divine protection. Hospitality was not merely generosity. It helped distinguish ordered human life from lawlessness. Odysseus expects the name of Zeus to carry weight. Polyphemus listens. Then he answers with words more disturbing than any roar. The Cyclops do not care about Zeus. They do not fear the blessed gods. They are stronger. The fire cracks. You feel the warmth against your face, but the cave suddenly seems colder. To ancient listeners, this is the true warning. Polyphemus has placed himself outside the sacred order. Yet another question remains. Does he truly reject the gods? Or does he simply believe that distance and strength place him beyond consequence? Odysseus understands the danger now. He lies. He tells Polyphemus that Poseidon destroyed the ship against the rocks, and that only these few men survived. It is a clever decision. If the Cyclops believes your vessel remains on the beach, he might destroy it or wait for the remaining crew. The lie protects the ship, but the mention of Poseidon carries an irony no one in the cave can yet appreciate. The god whose name Odysseus casually uses is the father of Polyphemus, and before this encounter is over, that father will hear a prayer that changes the entire voyage home. For now, Polyphemus says nothing. He simply reaches toward the men. His enormous hands close around two companions, and in that instant, you understand that the rules Odysseus trusted have ended at the mouth of this cave. Polyphemus reaches into the frightened group before anyone has time to move. Two men are caught in his hands. You hear their voices rise against the stone walls, and then the cave becomes a place where the familiar laws of the world seem to disappear. Odysseus and the others can do nothing but watch as the Cyclops turns the sacred expectation of hospitality into its opposite. The moment is terrible, but it passes quickly. Afterward, only the fire continues its ordinary movement. Flames bend around the wood. Sparks climb toward the darkness overhead. Sheep shift inside their pens, strangely calm, accustomed to their master's presence. Odysseus stands motionless. The man who entered this cave expecting a guest gift now understands the depth of his mistake. You can almost feel the thought moving through him. He brought these men here. They had urged him to take the cheese, gather lambs, and leave. He refused. Curiosity brought you inland. Pride made you wait. And now 2 companions are gone. No prophecy was needed to warn him. His own men had done so. Still, another warning seems to emerge from the fire itself. A burning branch collapses, sending sparks toward the roof before darkness swallows them. To a frightened traveller, even such a small event can feel like an omen, bright lives rising briefly, then disappearing. Ancient Greeks inhabited a world filled with signs. Those signs were rarely simple. A bird could promise victory to one observer and disaster to another. Thunder could confirm a decision or warn against it. Dreams might come from the gods, or merely from the anxieties of the dreamer. Here, no interpreter is available. Only fear. Polyphemus drinks milk and settles down among his animals. Soon the cave fills with his breathing. Odysseus remains awake. Moonlight cannot reach you. The stone at the entrance blocks the night outside so completely that time becomes difficult to measure. You know only the heat of the fire, the smell of animals, and the cold stone beneath you. Then Odysseus reaches toward his sword. His hand closes around the hilt. You understand what he wants to do. Polyphemus sleeps. Perhaps the giant can be killed. Odysseus could approach quietly, draw the bronze blade, and drive it into the vulnerable flesh beneath the ribs. For several heartbeats, revenge seems possible. Then he looks toward the entrance. The stone. Even if every surviving man pushed against it, it would not move. Kill Polyphemus tonight, and his body will become your prison guard forever. The realization stops Odysseus. His sword remains sheathed. This quiet decision may be more important than any act of violence that follows. A younger warrior might strike because anger demands action. Odysseus waits because survival demands thought. Greek audiences knew heroes of extraordinary strength. Heracles could overpower monsters. Achilles could dominate the battlefield. Ajax was remembered for immense physical power. Odysseus possesses something different. Metis, cunning intelligence, the ability to change shape in the mind before changing circumstances in the world. But cunning requires patience, and patience inside the Cyclops cave is painful. You wait through the night. Perhaps some men sleep briefly. Perhaps others cannot close their eyes. No one knows what morning will bring. Before dawn, Polyphemus rises. He rekindles the fire and begins milking the animals again. The routine is almost peaceful. Then he takes 2 more companions. The survivors retreat against the cave wall. Odysseus watches. You sense something changing inside him. Fear remains, grief remains, but helplessness is slowly becoming calculation. Polyphemus finishes his meal, then he moves the enormous stone. Morning appears after hours of darkness. Even the pale light feels brilliant. Cool air enters. You smell grass and distant salt water. For one hopeful instant, freedom seems only a few steps away. But Polyphemus sits beside the opening. He sends his flocks outside carefully, then replaces the stone before any Greek can reach the entrance. Darkness returns. The giant's footsteps fade into the hills. You are alone. 4 companions are gone. The cave is silent except for the animals left behind. Odysseus begins walking. He studies everything. The pens, the cheese baskets, the vessels, the walls, the floor, the timber stored near the edge of the cave. His gaze settles on a massive piece of olive wood. It is longer than a ship's mast and thick enough that an ordinary man could scarcely lift it. Polyphemus has apparently cut it to use as a staff once it dries. Odysseus approaches. He touches the rough wood. Olive, to Greek imagination. That tree carries powerful associations. It belongs to cultivated landscapes, sacred groves, oil lamps, food, ritual, and especially Athena, goddess of wisdom and strategic intelligence. Athena does not descend into the cave. No divine voice speaks. No glowing figure appears. Yet some later listeners could hardly miss the symbolism. Inside the home of brute strength, Odysseus finds olive wood. A material associated with civilization and Athena waits beside the man famous for cunning. Coincidence? Divine sign? Poetic design? Scholars continue to interpret such details differently. Odysseus does not have time to wonder. He calls the men together. His voice is quiet. He has a plan beginning to form. You will not kill the Cyclops. Not yet. First, you will take away the eye that watches the door. But even blindness will not move the stone. And somewhere beyond that problem waits another question Odysseus has not solved. How do you pass a blind giant who can still stand at the only entrance and feel every man trying to escape? Odysseus looks toward the olive wood again. The answer is not complete. But for the first time since the stone closed behind you, there is something in the cave besides fear. There is a possibility. The possibility begins with the olive wood. You stand beside Odysseus in the dim cavern while the enormous staff lies against the wall. Rough and pale beneath the uncertain firelight. Outside, Polyphemus is somewhere among the slopes with his flock, and every moment of his absence feels borrowed. Odysseus moves quickly. He chooses a section of the timber and orders the men to cut it down. Bronze bites into the wood. The work is difficult, and every strike sounds too loud inside the cave, as though the mountain itself might carry the noise to the Cyclops. At last, a heavy length comes free. Several men are needed to handle it. Odysseus directs them to smooth the wood and sharpen one end. Splinters fall onto the cold floor. The smell of fresh olive wood rises through the heavier scents of sheep, dung, cheese, smoke, and sour milk. Slowly, the point takes shape. Then Odysseus places it into the fire. Flames curl around the end. The wood darkens. Smoke climbs toward the roof. He turns it carefully until the point hardens in the heat. For ancient listeners, the scene carries a quiet reversal. Polyphemus has greater physical strength than every Greek in the cave combined. Yet his own household provides the weapon that may defeat him. The timber he intended for himself is being transformed by weaker men through craft, cooperation, and intelligence. Strength possesses the object. Cunning changes its purpose. When the point is ready, Odysseus removes it from the fire and hides the stake beneath refuse near the cave wall. Now another problem appears. Who will help him use it? The weapon is too large for one man. Odysseus chooses 4 companions by lot. The drawing of lots had deep significance in Greek life and storytelling. It could distribute responsibility while leaving the final selection to chance or, perhaps, to whatever divine will might operate through chance. The men wait. The lots are drawn. 4 are chosen. Odysseus will be the 5th. No one knows whether the gods have guided the selection. but everyone understands what it means. When Polyphemus sleeps, these 5 must approach him. If one loses courage, all may die. If the giant wakes too early, there will be nowhere to run, and even success will leave you trapped behind the stone. The plan remains incomplete. Odysseus knows this. Still, one obstacle must be solved at a time. You spend the remaining hours waiting, without the sun. Time becomes strange. Dust hangs in shafts of faint light from small cracks high above. Animals move quietly behind their barriers. Somewhere water drips with slow regularity. Your mind returns to the 4 men already lost. Odysseus must remember them too. Perhaps he also remembers the companion's warning before entering the cave. Take the cheese. Take the lambs. Return to the ship. It was good advice. He ignored it. This is part of what makes Odysseus different from a simple hero of victory. His intelligence repeatedly saves him, but his choices repeatedly create dangers that intelligence must then solve. Ancient audiences could admire him without imagining him flawless. By late afternoon, sounds reach the cave from outside. Sheep, bells, footsteps. Polyphemus is returning. The men move away from the hidden stake. The great stone shifts. Evening light pours inside. Polyphemus enters with his flock. Then the stone closes again. He begins the same routine. Milking, separating the animals, preparing his food. And once again, he takes 2 Greeks. The surviving men watch in silence. 6 companions have now been lost. Odysseus does not reach for his sword. He waits. This restraint is painful, but the plan requires the Cyclops alive long enough to open the entrance. Then Odysseus reaches for something else. The goat skin, the wine of Maron. The gift has travelled with you from Ismarus, where violence had followed the Greek victory at Troy. Maron, priest of Apollo, had been spared by Odysseus, and gratitude returned in the form of extraordinarily powerful wine. Now an earlier act of mercy becomes a weapon. Odysseus fills a cup. He approaches Polyphemus. The giant smells the wine. He drinks. Almost immediately his expression changes. The taste is unlike the rough drink of this isolated coast. It belongs to vineyards, cultivated soil, careful storage, ritual feasts, and the human world beyond these hills. Polyphemus asks for more. Odysseus gives it. The Cyclops drinks again, and again. Outside, unseen beyond the stone, the evening wind moves across the pasture. Perhaps somewhere over the sea, a cloud passes before the moon as it did on the previous night. A warning repeated, or merely weather. No one can know. Polyphemus grows warmer toward the stranger, offering him wine. Then he asks Odysseus a question. "Tell me your name." The men become still. Names matter. A name carries family, homeland, reputation, and memory. Odysseus has spent years building his name beneath the walls of Troy. Now survival may require him to surrender it, only for a little while. Odysseus looks into the single eye of Polyphemus. The Cyclops waits. The fire crackles between them. And the answer forming in Odysseus's mind will soon become one of the most famous lies ever spoken in Greek myth. The answer does not come immediately. You watch Odysseus stand before Polyphemus with the cup still in his hand, while the fire throws long shadows across the cave. The Cyclops has drunk deeply, yet his great eye remains fixed upon the stranger who's brought him this unexpected pleasure. "Tell me your name." It should be an easy question. For Odysseus, names have never been small things. His name belongs to Ithaca, to his father Laertes, to Penelope waiting in the palace halls, to the son who was only an infant when the ship sailed for Troy. It belongs to 10 years of war, to councils among kings, to the wooden horse, and to a reputation built upon intelligence rather than sheer force. But here, none of that can help you. Here, fame is useless. Odysseus lowers the cup. He does not answer yet. Instead, he pours more wine. Polyphemus drinks. The liquid disappears between his lips, and a satisfied sound rumbles through the cave. The wine is powerful enough that Greeks would normally dilute it heavily with water. Polyphemus knows nothing of that custom. He drinks it as it is given. Again, then again. Odysseus watches carefully. This is not yet the moment. Patience. That is the weapon now. Hours earlier, you watched him nearly draw his sword while Polyphemus slept. Anger urged him to kill. Reason stopped him because the stone would remain. Now the same restraint governs every movement. You wait. Polyphemus's head begins to lower. His voice becomes heavier. Still, he demands the name of his guest. And before Odysseus finally answers, your mind drifts toward morning. Because the night inside the cave has taught you to think about morning differently. Before this place, dawn meant departure. Sails raised, oars lowered. Another stretch of sea between you and Ithaca. Here, dawn means the Cyclops will move the stone. It means the door will open. It means light will enter. But it does not mean freedom. You remember the previous morning. Polyphemus rose before the sun fully reached the hills. He milked the animals, prepared his meal, moved the great stone, and allowed the flock to pass outside. Then he sealed you in again. That routine is now more important than any sword. Odysseus understands it. He has been studying the giant, not merely his strength, his habits. That distinction matters. A powerful enemy may be impossible to defeat directly, but a habit creates predictability. Polyphemus must sleep, he must tend his animals, he must open the cave, and he trusts his own strength so completely that he has never needed to imagine someone using those habits against him. Perhaps this is his flaw. Not cruelty alone, certainty. The certainty that nothing weaker could ever threaten him. Ancient Greek stories often return to this danger. A king trusts his walls, a warrior trusts his strength, a wealthy household trusts its fortune. Then fate enters through the one possibility no one thought worth fearing. Polyphemus has already received a warning of his own, though you do not yet know it. Long before your ship reached this coast, a prophecy had been spoken. One day, the Cyclops would lose his sight. The seer responsible was Telemus, remembered in the Odyssey as a prophet who lived among the Cyclopes and foretold what would happen to Polyphemus. But prophecy is rarely useful in the way mortals wish. Knowing that something will happen does not mean knowing how. Polyphemus has imagined the man who might fulfill the prediction. Perhaps a giant warrior, perhaps someone terrible in appearance. Certainly not this weary traveller standing before him with a cup of wine. That old prophecy waits unseen in the cave. You do not know it yet. Odysseus does not know it. And this is one of the quiet mysteries of fate in Greek storytelling. Can you avoid a prophecy when you misunderstand its shape? Or does misunderstanding become part of how the prophecy finds you? Polyphemus reaches again for the wine. Odysseus gives it willingly. The Cyclops drinks until the cave seems to sway around him. His enormous body relaxes. The sheep remain gathered in their pens. A lamb calls softly, somewhere beyond the stone. The wind must be moving through the grass beneath a star-filled sky. You cannot see it. But you remember the stars. You remember sleeping beside the fires on the island across the channel, when this coast was merely smoke in the distance. How simple the mystery seemed then. Who lives there? Now you know, and you would give almost anything to return to the moment before curiosity answered the question. Odysseus glances toward the hidden olive stake. The men chosen by Lot understand. Their faces are tense in the firelight. The plan is approaching its first true test. But before the stake can be used, the Cyclops must become helpless. And before that happens, Odysseus must answer the question. Your name? Polyphemus asks once more. This time Odysseus smiles faintly. The answer he gives is not the name carried from Ithaca. It is a name created for this cave, a name designed not for memory but for disappearance. Nobody. That is what you may call me. Nobody. Polyphemus repeats it. The word seems almost absurd coming from such an enormous mouth. He promises his guest a gift in return for the wine. Nobody will be eaten last. A monstrous parody of Xenia. Yet Odysseus has what he wanted. The false name has entered the Cyclops' mind. Soon Polyphemus' head begins to sink. His eye closes. His breathing deepens. The wine has done its work. Odysseus turns toward the surviving men, then toward the hidden olive wood. The stone still seals the entrance. Dawn is still hours away. But for the first time, Polyphemus lies helpless before you. And now the men must decide whether they can carry out the terrible plan that survival requires. Polyphemus sleeps. You hear his breathing before you hear anything else. It rolls through the cave in slow, heavy waves, deeper than the wind outside and rougher than the sea striking cliffs. The fire has burned lower now, leaving red embers beneath blackened branches. Their glow touches the giant's face, the stone floor, and the frightened men gathered in silence. The wine has done what Odysseus hoped, but hope is not escape. The great stone remains across the entrance, and Polyphemus is still alive. Odysseus moves first. He crosses toward the place where the olive stake lies hidden beneath refuse. The men chosen by lot follow him. You watch them uncover the timber and lift it together. It is enormous. Even cut down from the original staff, it requires several men to carry. The sharpened point is hard from the earlier fire, but Odysseus is not satisfied. He gestures toward the embers. The men understand. You feed dry wood into the fire. At first there is only smoke. Then a small flame appears. Another follows. Soon orange light spreads across the cavern, and the sharpened end of the olive wood is lowered into the heat. The point begins to darken. Smoke rises from it. You smell burning olive wood mixing with wool, milk, earth, and the heavy air of the cave. Polyphemus shifts. Everyone freezes. His hand moves across the floor. One of the men nearly drops his side of the stake. Then the giant settles again. The breathing resumes. Odysseus waits. This patience has become the rhythm of survival. You remember how close he came to drawing a sword during the first night. Had he followed anger then, Polyphemus might be dead, but you would still be imprisoned. Now Odysseus is not trying to destroy his enemy. He is trying to remove one advantage: sight. That distinction is important. The plan depends on leaving Polyphemus strong enough to open the cave, but wounded enough to be deceived afterward. The stake grows hotter. Its point begins to glow. To an ancient Greek listener, there would be something deeply appropriate about the material chosen for this act. Olive wood. Across the Greek world, olive trees belong to daily life and sacred memory. Their fruit provided food. Their oil illuminated homes and sanctuaries. Athletes received olive wreaths. Sacred groves surrounded places where mortals approached the gods. And above all, the olive was associated with Athena, the goddess of strategic intelligence, the divine protector who will become inseparable from Odysseus's long struggle to return home. Athena does not appear visibly here. There is no flash of divine light. No voice speaks from the darkness. Yet the symbolism remains difficult to ignore. The Cyclops possesses overwhelming physical power. Odysseus answers with an olive stake transformed through human craft. Some researchers see episodes like this as part of a broader contrast in the Odyssey between ordered society and life beyond its boundaries. Polyphemus has animals and food, but he rejects assemblies, agriculture, shared law, and sacred hospitality. Odysseus brings with him the habits of another world: wine, planning, cooperation, tools, ritual expectations. But the contrast is not simple. Odysseus is capable of violence. Polyphemus is capable of affection for his animals. Civilization and savagery do not divide perfectly between two bodies. The poem leaves room for discomfort. Perhaps that is why the story survives. The point of the stake is ready. Odysseus lifts his hand. The chosen men gather around it. For one moment, you sense hesitation. These are warriors who survived Troy. They have heard bronze strike shields. They have seen towers burn beneath distant storms. They have walked through palace halls ruined by war. Yet this feels different. There is nowhere to retreat. If Polyphemus wakes too soon, you will die within reach of his hands. Then something happens in the fire. A spark leaps from the burning wood and lands near Odysseus's feet. It burns briefly against the stone before disappearing. An omen. Perhaps a tiny light extinguished in darkness might warn of death, or it might suggest that fire, however small, can wound even stone-black night. No one stops to interpret it. Odysseus gives the signal. The men lift the stake. You move across the cavern. Each step feels louder than the last. Polyphemus lies before you. His eye is closed. His face is relaxed by wine. For a strange instant, The terrifying giant looks almost peaceful, and you remember the prophecy he does not yet remember. Telemus once warned that Polyphemus would lose his sight. Perhaps destiny has been waiting years for this night. Perhaps every decision the voyage from Troy, the storm, the lotus eaters, the island, the crossing, the refusal to leave the cave. Marin's wine has slowly assembled this moment, or perhaps fate only appears orderly when remembered afterward. Ancient storytellers leave that question open. Odysseus positions the men. The stake is raised, its heated point glows faintly. The Cyclops breathes in, breathes out. Odysseus watches the rhythm. He waits. One breath. Another. Then he gives the signal. The men surge forward. The olive point descends toward the single eye. And in the final heartbeat before it strikes, the entire journey seems balanced between two possibilities. Freedom or death beneath the mountain. The olive point hangs above Polyphemus for only an instant. Then Odysseus signals the men to hold. Not yet. The Cyclops shifts beneath the weight of sleep. One enormous shoulder rolling toward the fire, his hand moves across the stone, close enough that you hear fingernails scrape against the floor. The men carrying the stake retreat half a step and remain frozen. Polyphemus exhales. His body becomes still again. Odysseus lowers the weapon. This is the cruelty of the plan. You cannot simply attack because the opportunity seems good. Everything must happen at the right moment. The wine must pull the Cyclops into deeper sleep. The men must remain steady, and the heated olive wood must stay ready. Your attention returns to the goatskin lying near the fire, the wine of Marin. Without it, the sharpened stake might never reach its target, and the wine itself has a history. Before this lonely cave, before the lotus eaters and the mysterious island across the channel, you had reached Ismarus, city of the Cyclones. After leaving Troy, there, victory became excess. The Greeks raided the settlement, took treasure, and remained too long despite Odysseus urging them to depart. Reinforcements came from inland. Battle followed. Men died. It was another warning about delay, another moment when survival depended upon knowing when to leave, yet among the destruction. Odysseus spared Marin, a priest of Apollo, together with his household. In gratitude, Marin gave him gifts. Gold, a fine mixing bowl, and jars of extraordinarily potent wine. The wine was sweet and fragrant. Traditionally diluted with many parts water before drinking, Odysseus had carried a portion of it with him when he crossed to the Cyclops shore. Perhaps he expected it to serve as a diplomatic gift. Perhaps experience simply taught him never to enter an unknown household empty-handed. Whatever the reason, mercy shown on one shore has become protection on another. Ancient audiences would have understood the pattern. A gift was rarely only an object. It carried memory, relationship, obligation. A cup could remember the hand that gave it long after the giver disappeared beyond the horizon. You can imagine Marin's wine beginning far from this cave, beneath warmer sunlight where vines climbed through cultivated ground. Grapes ripened slowly, hands gathered them, juice was pressed, fermented, stored, and guarded. Everything about the wine belongs to human cooperation, and now it lies inside Polyphemus. The Cyclops who mocked Zeus and violated hospitality has been weakened by a gift created through hospitality. The irony would not have been lost on Greek listeners. Still, there is another layer. Wine itself occupied an uncertain place in Greek culture. It belonged to feasts and sacrifices. Cups passed between companions. Libations were poured to gods. Wine could soften conversation and create fellowship, but it could also destroy judgment. The Greeks generally mixed wine with water, and excessive drinking could represent the surrender of self-control. Polyphemus drinks without restraint. He wants pleasure immediately. He asks for more because more is available. In that sense, the wine does not create his weakness. It reveals it. You look toward Odysseus. There is a warning here for him too, though he cannot yet see it. Polyphemus cannot stop drinking when enough would have been wiser. Soon Odysseus will find that he cannot stop speaking when silence would have been wiser. different appetites, the same dangerous excess. The earlier warning of the companions returns quietly. Take the food. Leave the cave. Odysseus ignored them because curiosity demanded more. Now the Cyclops has ignored the caution that unfamiliar gifts should perhaps inspire. Both men possess confidence. Both believe they control the encounter. Only one is currently awake. Polyphemus murmurs something in his sleep. The men tense again. Perhaps he is dreaming. Ancient Greeks sometimes imagined dreams as messages capable of carrying divine truth. Although they also knew that dreams could deceive, Homeric poetry itself distinguishes between dreams that reveal something real and those that mislead. What does a Cyclops dream? Does he see the prophecy of Telemus? Does he remember a warning spoken years ago, telling him that his eye would one day be taken by Odysseus? Or does he dream only of sheep moving across sunlit slopes? No surviving tradition tells you. That mystery remains inside the sleeping giant. Odysseus kneels near the fire. He turns the stake once more. Its point has become hard and blackened. The men prepare themselves. You can hear their breathing now. Outside the cave, the night continues without you. Stars fill the sky above the island. Sea winds cross the channel. The ships wait on the distant shore where men may be looking toward this coastline, wondering why Odysseus has not returned. Inside, the world is narrowed to fire, wood, wine, and one sleeping eye. Odysseus rises. He looks at the men chosen by lot. This time there will be no hesitation. The stake is lifted. Polyphemus lies deeply unconscious. And as you move toward him again, you understand that Marin's gift has reached the purpose no one could have predicted when it was first placed in Odysseus' hands. An act of mercy has crossed the sea. Now it opens the path towards survival. But the path still runs through the eye of a giant. The men lift the olive stake again. This time Odysseus does not stop them. The fire behind you has fallen low enough that the cavern is painted mostly in red and amber. Polyphemus lies stretched across the stone floor, overcome by Marin's wine. His breathing comes heavily through the darkness. Yet before the plan reaches its violent purpose, you remember the exchange that made it possible. A little earlier, while the Cyclops still sat awake beside the fire, Odysseus had filled the cup again. Polyphemus accepted it eagerly. The first drink surprised him. The second pleased him. By the third, suspicion had begun to disappear. He asked where such wine came from. Perhaps somewhere within his isolated life. He understood that this drink belonged to a world beyond his pastures. It carried the sweetness of cultivated vines, careful storage, ritual, trade, and human hands working together across seasons. Odysseus encouraged him to drink. The Cyclops did. Then came the question, "What is your name?" For an ancient Greek hero, this was not a trivial request. A name carried ancestry. A name carried homeland. When warriors met before battle in epic poetry, they often declared who their fathers were and where they came from. Identity stretched backward through generations. Reputation could survive the body. Odysseus had spent 10 years at Troy creating such a reputation. Yet inside this cave, reputation could kill him. So when Polyphemus asks his name, Odysseus performs one of the strangest acts available to a heroic man. He erases himself. Nobody. The famous Greek word behind the trick is often rendered as autis, meaning nobody or no one. Homer plays with language around the deception, and generations of listeners have admired how a simple word becomes a weapon. My name is nobody. Polyphemus hears it, accepts it, and laughs. Then he offers his own version of hospitality. He promises Odysseus a guest gift. Nobody will be eaten last. The others will come first. That will be his gift. The sacred custom of Xenia has been twisted into something grotesque. Normally, food protects the guest. Here, the guest becomes food. Normally, wine creates fellowship. Here, wine prepares revenge. Normally, the exchange of names begins a relationship. Here, a false name becomes the means of ending one. You feel again how completely the cave has inverted the civilized world Odysseus expected to find. Yet the false name carries another meaning. For a few hours, Odysseus survives precisely because he is willing not to be Odysseus. he becomes anonymous, unremembered, nobody. There is wisdom in that disappearance, but there is also a warning. Can Odysseus remain nobody once he is safe? Can a hero who has spent his adult life pursuing honor accept a victory for which no one knows his name? The answer waits beyond the cave. For now, Polyphemus continues drinking. His eye becomes unfocused. The cup slips lower in his hand. The enormous body sways. Odysseus waits. Finally, the Cyclops falls backward. The sound rolls through the cavern. Wine and exhaustion overcome him. The moment has arrived. You move toward the hidden stake. The men chosen by lot take their positions. Odysseus looks toward the stone blocking the entrance. He knows the danger has not changed. Even if the blinding succeeds, you remain trapped until morning. Polyphemus must live. He must wake. He must move the stone himself. It is a plan built upon contradiction. You must wound the giant badly enough to defeat him, but not so badly that he cannot release you. You must make him helpless without removing his strength, and you must trust that a blinded, enraged Cyclops will still follow the routine of his flock. No prophecy guarantees success, yet an old prophecy is already moving toward fulfillment. Telemus had warned Polyphemus that Odysseus would take his sight. The Cyclops remembered the prediction differently. He expected someone formidable, perhaps a warrior whose appearance matched the magnitude of the prophecy. Instead, destiny arrives calling itself nobody. Greek myth returns again and again to this strange quality of fate. Mortals hear the future and imagine they understand it. Then fulfillment comes from an unexpected direction. Perhaps prophecy does not hide the truth. Perhaps expectation hides it. The olive point glows. Odysseus gives the signal. You and the others drive forward. The sharpened wood plunges into the single eye. Polyphemus wakes. His scream seems to shake the mountain. Sheep scatter through their pens. Men grip the stake while Odysseus directs them to twist it, turning the heated point deeper. The Cyclops roars. His hands sweep blindly through the cave. You retreat into darkness. Outside, the sound carries across the hills. Other Cyclopes hear him. Voices approach from beyond the sealed entrance. They call to Polyphemus through the night. Why is he screaming? Is someone stealing his sheep? Is someone murdering him? Polyphemus answers from inside. Nobody is killing me. Nobody is attacking me. Silence follows. The Cyclopes outside misunderstand exactly as Odysseus intended. If nobody harms him, they conclude. Then perhaps his suffering comes from the gods, and there is little they can do. Their footsteps fade. The night swallows them. Inside the cave, Odysseus listens. His deception has worked. The false name has protected you. But somewhere beneath the relief lies the unanswered question from earlier. Will Odysseus have the strength to remain nobody after he escapes? Because sometimes the most dangerous moment is not when a plan fails. It is when success convinces you that you cannot be defeated. The footsteps of the neighbouring Cyclopes fade into the night. You remain pressed against the cold wall of the cave, barely breathing. Polyphemus is no longer asleep. He crouches somewhere beyond the fading fire, enormous hands moving through darkness, searching for the men who have blinded him. The olive stake lies near his feet, blackened by flame and darkened by the wound it has made. His cries have softened into deep, uneven groans. The single eye that once watched the entrance can no longer see. Yet blindness has not made him harmless. If anything, the danger has become more uncertain. Polyphemus stretches his arms across the cavern and sweeps them slowly through the air. His fingers pass close to one companion, who lowers himself against the stone and remains perfectly still. You hear wool brushing against wooden barriers. A frightened lamb calls. The giant turns toward the sound. For a moment, you wonder whether he can distinguish the breathing of sheep from the breathing of men. Odysseus does not move. He understands that the plan has entered its most fragile stage. The false name has worked. The wine has worked. The stake has worked. But none of those things has opened the cave. The stone remains where Polyphemus placed it. You have taken away his sight, but his strength remains untouched. And dawn is still far away. The Cyclops finally reaches the entrance and sits beside the stone. Perhaps he understands the same thing you do. You cannot leave unless he moves it. So he waits. The image would have carried a powerful meaning for ancient listeners. The creature who rejected the sacred laws of hospitality now guards the doorway of his own home like a wounded gatekeeper, while the strangers he intended to destroy remain alive through intelligence and restraint. But victory is not complete. Odysseus knows better than to mistake one success for freedom. At least for now. You wait through the remaining darkness. The cave has changed. Earlier, Polyphemus's eyes seemed to dominate everything. Wherever you moved, you imagined that gaze following you. Now there is no gaze, only listening. Every sound matters. A sandal scraping stone, a cough, a whispered word, the shifting of a frightened animal. The men communicate almost entirely through touch. Odysseus moves among them slowly. You sense him thinking. The next problem is clear. When morning comes, Polyphemus must let the flock out. But a blind shepherd will not simply stand aside. He will search for you. Perhaps he will feel along the walls. Perhaps he will count the animals. Perhaps he will place his hands upon every back passing through the entrance. You need another deception. And this time, words will not be enough. You look toward the sheep. They rest in clusters across the cavern. Their thick wool catches the weak firelight. Some are large rams, powerful animals with heavy bodies and curling horns. They know nothing of the conflict surrounding them. Their world remains simple pasture, shelter, milk, the voice of their shepherd. Polyphemus cares for them. That too complicates the image of him. The same hands that killed guests also milk sheep gently. The same creature who mocks Zeus understands the needs of his flock. Greek myth rarely makes monsters interesting by making them completely alien. Often they disturb you because of something recognizable remains within them. A household, a routine, affection, and then a violation so extreme that the familiar becomes frightening. Polyphemus begins speaking. At first you cannot understand him. Then you realize he's calling upon the other Cyclops again. Though they are too far away now to answer, he curses the attacker called Nobody. The name echoes strangely through the cave. Nobody. Odysseus has made himself absent while standing only a short distance away. Some modern interpretations see something deeper in this trick. The hero temporarily gives up the identity he values most to survive. He becomes nameless, almost socially non-existent. That transformation should perhaps teach him something. A warning. There are moments when survival requires you to accept anonymity, but Odysseus has not yet learned whether he can live with that lesson. Outside, darkness slowly begins to thin. You cannot see the eastern horizon, but the animals sense morning before you do. Sheep begin to rise. Hooves shift. The flock becomes restless. Polyphemus notices. His routine will continue. Even wounded, he must release them to pasture. Then Odysseus sees the possibility. He moves toward the rams. You follow. He touches the wool beneath one animal. Thick, dense, strong enough to conceal a man beneath its belly. The idea becomes clearer. Polyphemus will expect you to escape upright, perhaps running among the flock, so you will not walk out. You will be carried. Odysseus quietly selects the largest animals. 3 rams for each companion. The men begin binding them together with flexible willow branches and straps found in the cave. One man will hang beneath the middle animal while the 2 beside it conceal his body. It is slow work, dangerously slow. Polyphemus remains near the entrance. The darkness protects you. Perhaps Athena protects you too. The Odyssey sometimes presents divine assistance openly, but here intelligence seems to operate through ordinary things. Wood, wine, language, wool. The sacred olive stake has fulfilled one purpose. Now humble sheep will serve another. Before the first light reaches the cave, Polyphemus begins to move. He reaches for the entrance stone. The men freeze beneath the rams. A deep grinding sound fills the cavern. Stone moves against stone. Then cool morning air enters. You smell wet grass. Salt. The distant sea. After so long inside the cave, those scents feel almost impossible. Freedom lies only a few steps away. But Polyphemus does not leave the entrance. He sits beside it. Then he stretches his hands toward the first sheep. Slowly, carefully. He begins touching the backs of every animal that passes. The plan has reached the doorway, and now your life depends upon whether a blind giant thinks to feel beneath the wool. Morning enters the cave as a narrow band of pale light. After so many hours beneath smoke and stone, the cool air feels almost sacred against your face. You smell wet grass from the hillside, salt from the distant sea, and the faint sweetness of wild herbs warmed by the first light of dawn. But freedom is still guarded. Polyphemus sits beside the open entrance. His enormous body blocks much of the sky. Blood has dried around the ruined eye, and pain has changed his breathing into something slow and uneven. One hand rests against the stone, the other reaches toward every animal leaving the cave. The first sheep approaches. Polyphemus runs his hand across its back. Then another, and another. You remain hidden farther inside, watching. The plan Odysseus has created depends upon a simple assumption. The Cyclops will search above, you will escape below. Yet plans that sound perfect beside a dying fire can become fragile when morning arrives. Polyphemus is blind, not foolish. He knows you are still inside. He knows the stone was closed throughout the night. He knows no human could have moved it. So somewhere within the darkness, the men who blinded him must remain. He begins speaking to the animals as they pass. His voice is quieter now, almost sorrowful. That unexpected tenderness unsettles you. Only hours ago, those same hands brought horror into the cave, yet now they move gently through wool, recognizing familiar animals by touch. Ancient storytellers understood that terror becomes more memorable when the monster contains something almost human. Polyphemus is cruel, but he is also a shepherd. He has been defeated not because he lacks intelligence entirely, but because Odysseus has found the boundaries of that intelligence. You remember how the struggle began. The Cyclops returned at sunset. The stone closed. Hospitality was rejected. Then came the wine, the false name, the heated olive steak, the scream that carried across the hills, and the neighbouring Cyclops asking who was attacking him. Nobody. That answer still hangs invisibly over everything. The deception worked because language itself became part of the trap. When Polyphemus cried that nobody was hurting him, his neighbours heard not a name but an absence. They left him alone. Some scholars have long admired the episode as an example of the Odyssey's fascination with language and identity. Odysseus does not overcome the giant by becoming stronger. He changes what words mean within a particular moment, yet the success carries a warning. The name Nobody protects him only while his true identity remains hidden. That lesson has not finished unfolding. For now, Odysseus directs the final preparations. The surviving companions are secured beneath the rams. 3 animals move together for each man, with the Greek concealed beneath the middle one. Thick wool brushes against skin. The smell of animals surrounds you. Your arms ache from holding yourself close beneath the warm body above. You feel every movement of the ram, its breathing, the shifting muscles beneath its belly, the rhythm of its hooves against stone. One group begins moving, then another. Each approaches Polyphemus. His hand passes over the backs. He finds nothing. The men beneath them continue toward daylight. You hear no shout, no sudden struggle. The plan is working. One by one, companions disappear beyond the entrance. Odysseus waits for the largest ram. He doesn't place himself beneath 3 animals. Instead, he grips the thick wool beneath the belly of the greatest ram in the flock. It is the animal Polyphemus favours most. The irony is almost perfect. The Cyclops' strongest ram will carry away the man who destroyed his sight. Odysseus clings beneath it. The ram walks toward the doorway. Slowly, Polyphemus reaches out. His hand settles upon the animal's back, and then the ram stops. Your breath seems to stop with it. The Cyclops recognizes the animal. He speaks to it. Why are you last today? Normally, you're first from the cave, first to pasture, first to the stream. Why do you walk behind the others now? The question is dangerous because Polyphemus has noticed what is different. Odysseus hangs beneath the ram without moving. The giant strokes the animal's wool. Perhaps, Polyphemus says, you grieve for your master's eye. If only you could speak. If only you could tell me where nobody is hiding. For a strange moment. The cave becomes quiet around this wounded shepherd and his favourite animal. Then Polyphemus curses the man who blinded him. His anger rises again. He imagines finding nobody and destroying him. But his hand remains on the ram's back, not beneath it. That single mistake decides everything. Perhaps this is chance. Perhaps it is Athena's unseen guidance. Perhaps the Cyclops' affection for the ram makes him less suspicious of it than he should be. Ancient listeners could choose their own explanation. Polyphemus finally releases the animal. The ram moves, one step, then another. Odysseus passes beneath the giant's hand. The sunlight grows stronger. Cold stone gives way to earth. The cave roof disappears, and suddenly Odysseus is outside. He does not stand immediately. He allows the ram to carry him farther from the entrance before releasing the wool. Then his feet touch grass. Morning spreads across the slopes. Mist rests between distant hills. The sea shines beyond the rocks. For the first time since entering the cave, nothing stands between Odysseus and the horizon. The surviving companions gather quietly. No one celebrates. Not yet. Polyphemus is still close. The ship is still far below. And the prophecy of Telemus has been fulfilled. The Cyclops has lost his eye to Odysseus exactly as foretold. But another prediction is about to be born, one far more dangerous, because the man who escaped by becoming nobody will soon feel the irresistible desire to become Odysseus again. The grass feels cool beneath your feet, after the stale warmth of the cave. The morning air seems impossibly clean. Sea wind moves across the hillside, carrying salt from the channel and the fragrance of wild thyme crushed beneath the flock. Mist hangs in the lower valleys, while the rising sun touches the distant water with a narrow path of silver. You are outside, but you are not safe. Odysseus releases the wool beneath the great ram only after the animal has carried him well beyond the entrance. His arms are stiff from holding himself against its belly. His hands ache. Wool fibres cling to his clothing and skin. Around him, the surviving companions emerge from beneath their animals. They look at one another. There had been 12 men when you climbed from the shore. 6 remain beside Odysseus now. The absence of the others is more powerful than any celebration. Odysseus gestures for silence. Behind you, Polyphemus still sits at the mouth of the cave. He cannot see the men gathering among his flock. He continues feeling the animals as they pass, searching for bodies that are no longer there. You begin moving downhill, slowly at first. The sheep come with you. Odysseus intends to take them. Perhaps they are compensation for what has been lost. Perhaps they are provisions for the voyage. Perhaps taking them is another act of defiance against the Cyclops. The largest ram walks nearby. Odysseus looks at it. Only moments ago, Polyphemus had spoken to this animal with a tenderness absent from everything else you had seen. That memory complicates the escape. You have survived a monster, yet you have also stolen something from a shepherd who, for all his cruelty towards strangers, clearly loves his flock. Greek myth is often comfortable with such contradictions. Victory does not always arrive cleanly. You descend toward the sea. Every few steps, someone looks behind. The cave becomes smaller against the mountainside. Polyphemus remains near its entrance. Then he understands. Perhaps he hears too few animals nearby. Perhaps he hears movement farther down the slope. Perhaps instinct tells him that the silence inside the cave is wrong. He stands. His voice rolls across the hillside. The men begin moving faster. Sheep scatter among the rocks. Odysseus urges everyone toward the shore. Polyphemus reaches outward blindly. There is nothing to grasp. The men who defeated him are already beyond his hands. His blindness has transformed the landscape around him. Yesterday, every path belonged to him. He could move the stone, cross the slopes, drive the flock, return after sunset. Now the familiar hillside has become uncertain ground. Every rock is an obstacle. Every sound may be an enemy. The transformation is immediate and cruel. Ancient audiences knew that blindness in myth could carry meanings beyond physical injury. Seers such as Tiresias possess no ordinary sight, yet perceive truths hidden from others. Polyphemus experiences the opposite. He has lost his eye, but gained no wisdom from the loss. Not yet. He knows only rage. You continue downhill. The ship appears between the rocks. The companions left aboard see you approaching. At first, relief spreads across their faces. Then they notice how few men return. Their expressions change. No explanation is needed. They help bring the sheep aboard. The animals resist the unfamiliar wooden deck. Hooves strike planks. Men pull ropes. Steady the flock, and try to keep the vessel balanced. Odysseus climbs aboard last. He turns toward the hillside. Polyphemus has moved from the cave. The Cyclops follows sounds toward the coast. Stumbling across terrain he once knew perfectly. His hands reach into empty air. The sight should perhaps inspire pity, but the memory of the 6 dead companions remains too fresh. The sailors push the ship from shore. Water reaches their thighs. Then the hull floats. Men climb aboard. Oars are lowered. The first stroke carries you away. Then another. The coast begins to recede. Only now does something like relief enter the crew. A man whispers a prayer. Another touches the deck as though reassuring himself that the ship is real. Odysseus stands near the stern. He looks toward Polyphemus. The giant has reached the shoreline. He hears the oars. His head turns toward the sound. He knows. The strangers are escaping. He bends and searches the ground. His hands close around a rock. Even from the water you can see its size. The rowers increase their pace. The stone leaves Polyphemus's hands. For an instant it seems to hang against the bright morning sky. Then it strikes the sea. The impact is tremendous. Water rises. The ship lifts on the sudden wave. Men shout as the current pushes the vessel back toward shore. The Cyclops cannot see where you are, but sound gives him enough direction to threaten you. The omen is unmistakable. Escape has not ended the danger. Odysseus orders the men to row. Oars bite desperately into the water. The ship turns. Slowly, painfully, you regain distance. Behind you, Polyphemus listens. Ahead, the island where the rest of the fleet waits lies across the channel. You should leave. Nothing more is required. You have escaped. The companions know this. They look toward Odysseus, and they see him still watching the shore. Something is changing in his face. Inside the cave. He survived because he surrendered his identity. Nobody defeated Polyphemus. Nobody escaped beneath the ram. Nobody passed beneath the giant's hand. But now the sea lies between Odysseus and his enemy. Safety begins to restore something that fear temporarily silenced. Pride. He wants Polyphemus to understand why this happened. He wants the Cyclops to know that violating guests brought punishment. Perhaps he also wants the victory attached to a name. His name. The crew senses the danger before he speaks. One man warns him quietly. Another asks him to leave the Cyclops behind. Their words echo the warning given before entering the cave. Take what you need. Go. Once before, Odysseus ignored that advice. Now he stands aboard the escaping ship with another chance to listen. A sea wind crosses the deck. Far above the hills, a dark cloud gathers against the otherwise clear morning. Perhaps it means nothing. Perhaps it is only weather. But in stories where gods watch mortals from beyond sight, clouds can carry uncomfortable possibilities. Odysseus draws breath. His companions turn toward him, and across the water. The blind Cyclops waits for a sound. The sea carries you away from the shore, but the memory of the cave remains close. You can still feel the weight of the darkness. You can still smell the smoke from the fire, the sour milk, the animals, and the damp stone. You can still hear the scream of Polyphemus echoing through the mountain. The ship moves steadily now, but no one feels completely free. The oars strike the water, again and again. The rhythm is almost calming. Almost. Behind you. The island grows smaller beneath the morning sun. The cliffs where the Cyclops lived fade into the mist. The cave entrance becomes only a dark mark against the mountain. Yet everyone aboard understands that the danger has not entirely disappeared. Odysseus stands silently. The men watch him. They know this is the same man who led them through Troy's walls, who survived battles against armies, who crossed enemy lands through deception and courage. But they also know something else. Odysseus is drawn toward moments that test him. Sometimes that quality saves him. Sometimes it places everyone around him in danger. The men row toward the island where the rest of the fleet waits. There, the other ships have remained anchored, unaware of what has happened across the channel. When your vessel finally reaches them, voices rise from the shore. Questions, relief, confusion. The missing men are counted. The silence that follows is heavy. No victory feast can erase the empty places. Ancient Greek audiences would have understood this feeling deeply. Heroes gained glory through danger, but glory always carried a price. Every song of victory contained memories of those who never returned. The sheep are unloaded. Fires are prepared. A meal is made. But the celebration is quiet. The survivors sit beneath the open sky, looking toward the distant coast. The island that seemed peaceful only days before now holds the memory of terror. That evening, as the sun lowers, Odysseus sacrifices one of the sheep. The smoke rises toward the heavens. The flames crackle. The smell of burning flesh mixes with the sea wind. Sacrifice was one of the most important ways ancient Greeks communicated with the divine world. Animals were offered to the gods in gratitude, request, or remembrance. The ritual connected ordinary human life with powers believed to exist beyond human control. Odysseus offers the sacrifice, but there is no immediate answer. No thunder, no voice from the sky, no clear sign. The silence itself feels meaningful. Perhaps Zeus accepts the offering. Perhaps another god is already listening. Perhaps fate has moved beyond the point where prayers can easily change its direction. Ancient traditions often leave such moments uncertain. The gods in Greek myth are powerful, but they are not always simple reflections of human wishes. They may favor, oppose, warn, or test mortals. Even a clever hero cannot always negotiate with destiny. That night, beneath the stars, Odysseus finally speaks with his companions. They ask him what happened inside the cave. He tells them the stone, the giant, the wine, the stake, the escape beneath the rams. The men listen quietly. Then someone asks the question that has remained unspoken. Who was the Cyclops? Odysseus answers, Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon. The name changes the atmosphere immediately. Poseidon, the god of earthquakes and the sea, the power that moves beneath ships, the force that can turn calm waters into destruction. The men look toward the horizon. They know what it means. The sea is not simply water. It belongs to powers older and greater than themselves. Perhaps this is the moment when the victory begins to feel less like triumph. Because a monster in a cave can be defeated, but a god who rules the ocean is another matter. Still, Odysseus does not yet reveal everything. Not the name he gave, not the temptation still growing within him, because part of him is still caught between two identities. Nobody. And Odysseus. The first saved him. The second defines him. The tension between them will soon become impossible to ignore. The following morning, preparations begin. The ships are repaired. The sails are raised. Food and water are gathered. The fleet prepares to continue the journey home. Ithaca waits somewhere beyond the endless horizon. Penelope waits. Telemachus waits. The palace halls wait, but the sea ahead is no longer simply a path home. A curse has entered the voyage, and it began not with a sword, not with a storm, but with a name. As the ships leave the island, Odysseus looks back one final time. The Cyclops land disappears beneath the morning mist. The olive stake is gone. The cave is behind him. Yet the question remains, can a man truly escape an enemy if he carries the memory of that enemy with him? The fleet leaves the island beneath a quiet sky. For a short while, the sea seems almost forgiving. The waves are gentle. The wind fills the sails without resistance. The wooden ships move forward like dark birds gliding across the blue surface. After the terror of the cave, this calm feels almost unreal. You sit among the survivors, listening to the familiar sounds of the vessel, ropes tightening, wood creaking, oars dipping into the water, men speaking softly. The ordinary sounds of travel have returned, yet something has changed. The crew is smaller. The silence between men is heavier. Everyone remembers those who did not return from the cave. In the world of ancient Greek heroes, Survival and sorrow often travelled together. Victory was rarely clean. The songs that celebrated heroes also carried the names of those lost along the way. Odysseus understands this, perhaps more than anyone. He has spent years surrounded by the dead. At Troy, he watched friends fall beneath bronze weapons. He saw kings disappear. He saw the greatest warriors of Greece become memories. And yet he continued. That is one of the reasons his story is different from other heroes. Achilles seeks glory even when he knows death awaits. Odysseus seeks return. His greatest desire is not a battlefield. It is home, a quiet island, a palace, a wife, a son, a life that existed before war. But the road home has become a journey through everything that stands between human beings and peace. The Cyclops was one of those obstacles, and the lesson of the cave should have been clear. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply leaving, but Odysseus is still carrying something from that place. Not the wound, not the fear, something more complicated, a need to be recognized. Days pass after the escape. The island of the Cyclops disappears behind the horizon. The men begin repairing their damaged spirits. Food is shared, stories are told. The survivors repeat the details of the escape, each retelling making the impossible seem slightly more understandable. How could a man defeat a giant? How could a handful of warriors escape a sealed cave? How could a single word confuse an entire race of Cyclops? Nobody. The name becomes a strange story among the crew. At first, it is spoken with relief, then admiration, then perhaps something else, because stories have power, and Odysseus knows it. He has always understood the importance of memory. The Greeks did not believe that a life disappeared completely after death. Through songs, monuments, descendants, and stories, a person's name could continue beyond the grave. To be remembered was a form of immortality. That desire had shaped heroes for generations. The warriors at Troy fought not only for kingdoms, but for honor that would survive them. Odysseus himself is not immune. He may have escaped by becoming nobody, but he is not nobody. He is Odysseus of Ithaca, son of Laertes, husband of Penelope, father of Telemachus, the man whose mind defeated Troy, the man who blinded the Cyclops. The title is forming, the story is forming, and perhaps that is the danger. Because while the crew sees a man who saved them, Odysseus may begin seeing a legend being created. Ancient storytellers often explored this tension. What separates heroic confidence from dangerous pride? When does courage become arrogance? When does the desire for honor become a threat to everything you love? These questions are not answered easily. Even the gods themselves are not always beyond pride. The Greek myths are filled with immortals who punish mortals for crossing invisible boundaries. Niobe challenges divine power and loses her children. Arachne challenges Athena and is transformed. Marsyas challenges Apollo and suffers terribly. Again and again. Greek stories warn that humans must understand their place within the larger order of existence. Odysseus has defeated a monster. But has he respected the boundary between mortal victory and divine consequence? That answer is waiting. For now, the ships continue. One evening, as the sun falls behind the sea, the crew gathers beneath the stars. The same stars that watched Troy burn, the same stars that watched the Cyclops cave. The sky is endless above them. An old sailor tells stories of the gods watching travellers from above. Another speaks of signs appearing before disasters. A third laughs and says the gods must have forgotten them if they have survived this long. But Odysseus remains quiet. Perhaps he's thinking of the cave. Perhaps of Polyphemus. Perhaps of the moment when he almost died because he wanted to know. A dream visits one of the sailors that night. He later describes seeing a great wave rising from the darkness, carrying a shadow with a voice like thunder. Was it a divine warning? Was it simply the fear of a man who had witnessed too much? No one can know, but the dream spreads uneasily among the crew, because sailors understand something important. The sea remembers. Every ship leaves a mark upon it. Every promise, every insult, every prayer. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a god of the sea has heard a name. Odysseus. The name that should have remained hidden. The name that replaced nobody. The name now travelling farther than any ship could carry. The dream fades with the morning light. but its feeling remains. You wake beneath the open sky with the image still lingering in your mind, a dark sea, a rising wave, a voice like distant thunder. The kind of dream that disappears from memory during ordinary days feels different when you are a traveller surrounded by uncertainty. Ancient Greeks often believed dreams could stand between the mortal world and the divine. Some dreams carried messages from gods, others reflected hidden fears already living inside the heart. The challenge was knowing which was which. No one aboard the ship can say. Perhaps it was nothing more than the mind remembering the Cyclops scream. Perhaps it was a warning, perhaps somewhere beyond human sight. Poseidon had begun to turn his attention toward the sea. The fleet continues, the ships move through waters that seem endless. Islands rise and disappear. Birds follow the vessels for a time before turning toward distant shores. The smell of salt remains constant, mixed with smoke from small cooking fires and the scent of wet ropes. Life aboard a Greek ship is simple and difficult. There are no comfortable rooms, no sheltered beds, only wooden benches, stretched sails, storage jars, and the endless movement of the waves. The men sleep wherever they can. They repair broken equipment, they ration food, they watch the horizon, and they wait for home. For Odysseus, that word has become almost sacred. Home. Ithaca, a small island compared with the powerful kingdoms of Greece. No golden walls like Mycenae, no vast armies like those commanded during the Trojan War, no legendary battlefield where songs of glory are created. Yet Ithaca means more to him than any kingdom. This is one of the deepest ideas within the Odyssey. The greatest journey is not always towards something greater. Sometimes it is towards something smaller, something familiar, something lost. The hero does not seek another throne. He seeks his own doorway, his own fields, his own family. But the sea between Troy and Ithaca has become a place where every weakness is tested. Courage, patience, loyalty, pride. The Cyclops has tested all of these. Odysseus passed some tests. He failed others. He escaped because he was clever. He endangered his men because he was curious. He survived because he became nobody. He placed them in danger because he wanted the world to know he was Odysseus. This contradiction is what makes him different from simpler heroes. He is not a perfect man. He is a brilliant one. And brilliance does not always protect someone from their own desires. As the days pass, the crew begins to speak more openly about the cave. The younger sailors are fascinated. They ask how large Polyphemus truly was. They ask whether his single eye looked like a burning star. They ask whether the giant was truly the son of Poseidon. Older sailors answer carefully. They have learned that every story grows when it passes from one person to another. Perhaps Polyphemus was even larger in memory than he was in life. Perhaps fear expanded him. Perhaps poetry transformed him. Historians continue to debate how much of the Cyclops tradition reflects older oral stories about encounters with distant peoples, ancient fears of unknown landscapes, and symbolic ideas about civilization and wilderness. The surviving poem preserves the mystery. It does not tell you exactly what the Cyclops were. Instead, it asks what happens when different worlds meet. The world of the ship, the world of the cave, the world of law and hospitality, the world of isolation and strength. As the fleet sails onward, the men begin preparing for another departure. Water jars are checked, sails are repaired, food is counted, the captured sheep are divided. The last traces of the Cyclops Island slowly disappear from daily life, but not completely. Odysseus still carries the memory. At night, when the others sleep, he sometimes stands alone near the bow. The wind moves through his hair, the stars shine above, the sea stretches in every direction. He looks forward, but perhaps he also looks backward. He may think of the moment when Polyphemus asked his name, the moment when he could have remained nobody, the moment when the safest choice was silence. Why did he speak? Was it pride, a desire for justice, a need to make sure his enemy understood what had happened? Ancient listeners might debate the answer. Some would admire the courage. A hero should claim his deeds. Others would see the mistake. A wise man should know when a victory is complete. The uncertainty remains because Odysseus himself remains uncertain. That evening, a strange stillness falls over the sea. The wind stops. The sails hang motionless. The ships drift beneath a sky filled with stars. The sailors become uneasy. A calm sea can feel more frightening than a storm, because a storm announces itself. Silence does not. An old companion whispers that the gods are watching. Another says that all seas eventually change. Odysseus says nothing. He has learned that even the calmest waters may hide something beneath them. Far away, beyond the horizon, a god has received a prayer. A wounded son has spoken. A father has listened. And the journey home has entered a new chapter. This silence does not last forever. By morning, the wind returns. The sails rise again, catching the breath of the sea, and the ships begin moving away from the still waters that had surrounded them. The crew welcomes the change. Motion feels safer than waiting. Yet the memory of the Cyclops shore remains. You can still see it when you close your eyes. The dark opening of the cave, the massive stone, the single eye, the olive stake, the flock moving through the entrance while men hidden beneath the wool held their breath. The escape feels impossible even now, but the strangest part is not how Odysseus escaped. It is what happens after, because sometimes the hardest battle begins when the danger appears to be over. The ships continue across the channel. The shore of the Cyclops grows smaller. The men relax slightly. Some begin preparing food. Some repair torn clothing. Some speak quietly about Ithaca. The future seems to open again. Then Odysseus moves toward the stern. You notice his expression. The relief that had briefly appeared is gone. Something unsettled remains. He looks back toward the island. Perhaps he is thinking about the dead companions. Perhaps he's thinking about the cave. Perhaps he is thinking about the story that will be told. The crew notices. They know him well enough now to understand. Odysseus is not satisfied with simply surviving. He wants meaning. He wants the Cyclops to understand what happened. He wants justice, or perhaps he wants recognition. These desires can look similar from the outside. Ancient Greek culture placed enormous value on honor and reputation. A warrior's name could survive longer than his body. Songs carried memories across generations. To be forgotten was one of the deepest fears of heroic society. Odysseus knows this. He's a man who lives through intelligence, but intelligence alone does not create glory. A hidden victory can feel incomplete. The men begin to understand what he is about to do. One companion approaches. He tells Odysseus to stop. The advice is simple. The danger is gone. Leave the Cyclops behind. The words should sound familiar. They're almost the same warning given before entering the cave. Take what you need. Return to the ship. Do not remain. Do not invite danger. But Odysseus looks toward the shore. And perhaps this is where the story becomes most human. Because he knows the wise choice. He understands the risk. He has already proven that he can think ahead. Yet something inside him refuses silence. He takes a deep breath. Then he calls across the water. At first, the sound seems small against the enormous sea, but the wind carries it. The words reach the shore. Polyphemus hears. The blind giant turns toward the voice. The other Cyclopes are gone. The cave is behind him, but the voice has returned. Odysseus shouts that the man who escaped was not nobody. The name is revealed. Odysseus, son of Laertes, king of Ithaca, the man who defeated the Cyclops. The crew reacts immediately. Fear spreads among them. Some shout at him to stop. Some reach toward him. But the words have already crossed the sea. The secret is gone. For a moment, there is a strange transformation. The man who survived through anonymity returns to his own identity. Nobody disappears. Odysseus returns. And with that return comes a new danger. Polyphemus stands on the shore. He cannot see, but he can listen. The name reaches him, and something changes, because the Cyclops remembers not only the wound, not only the humiliation, the prophecy, Telemus, the old warning, the name of the man who would one day blind him, Odysseus. The impossible has happened. The prophecy was never about a giant warrior, never about an army, never about a god. It was about a mortal traveller whose greatest weapon was his mind. Polyphemus understands too late. The man who defeated him was not stronger. He was simply cleverer. The Cyclops raises his hands toward the sky. His voice changes. The anger remains, but now it has direction. He does not curse an unknown enemy. He curses Odysseus. He calls upon his father, Poseidon, the god beneath the waves, the ruler of earthquakes, the power that shakes the earth and commands the sea. The crew hears the prayer, and suddenly the open water around you feels different. A moment earlier, the sea represented escape. Now it feels like a place where something unseen may be waiting. The sky darkens slightly. A distant rumble moves across the horizon. Perhaps it is only weather. Perhaps it is only the natural change of the sea. But sailors have always known that the ocean has moods, and Greek sailors especially understood the ocean as a realm filled with divine presence. Every wave carried uncertainty. Every storm carried a question. Odysseus stands quietly after speaking his name. Perhaps he feels the weight of what he has done. Perhaps he does not. The ship continues forward. The shore disappears, but the curse has already begun its journey. It does not need sails. It does not need oars. It travels through prayer, through memory, through the anger of a father who has heard the suffering of his son, and beneath the endless sky. You begin to understand something the cave was trying to teach. The Cyclops was never only a monster. He was a doorway. Behind him waited a greater struggle. A struggle between a mortal hero seeking home and a god of the sea determined to make that journey impossible. The name has been spoken. Odysseus of Ithaca. The sound travels across the sea and disappears into the distance, but the consequences remain aboard the ship. For several moments no one speaks. The men simply stare at him. They are not looking at a stranger. They are looking at their commander, the man who led them through Troy, the man who found a way out of the Cyclops cave, the man whose intelligence saved their lives. And yet, in this moment, they see something else. A man who has chosen danger when safety was already within reach. The silence among the crew is heavier than any storm. The sea continues moving beneath the hull. The sails continue pulling against the wind. But inside the ship, a different kind of tension grows. One companion finally speaks. Why? The question is not angry at first. It is filled with exhaustion. Why reveal yourself? Why give the Cyclops the very thing he needed most? Your name? Odysseus does not answer immediately. Perhaps he does not have a simple answer, because the truth is complicated. He may say that Polyphemus deserved to know the punishment for breaking the laws of hospitality. He may believe that justice required a name. He may feel that a hero cannot allow his greatest deed to belong to nobody. All of these thoughts may be true. That is what makes Odysseus difficult to judge. His decisions rarely come from only one place. Ancient audiences understood this complexity. The heroes of Greek myth were not examples of perfect behavior. They were larger than life, but they carried human weaknesses. Their greatness often existed beside their flaws. Achilles has unmatched courage but destructive anger. Agamemnon commands kings but struggles with pride. Odysseus possesses extraordinary intelligence but sometimes cannot resist proving it. The same quality that saves him can endanger him. His cleverness created the name Nobody. His pride destroyed it. The crew continues rowing. No one wants to remain near the Cyclops shore. The distance grows, but the fear does not disappear, because everyone understands what Polyphemus has done. He has called upon Poseidon, and prayers to gods in Greek stories are not empty words. The gods hear. They remember. They respond. You think back to the moment inside the cave when Odysseus first mentioned Poseidon while hiding the truth of the ship's destruction. At that time, the name was simply a clever lie. Now it has become something far more dangerous. The god himself has entered the story. The men know the sea belongs to Poseidon. They have seen how quickly calm waters can become deadly. They have watched waves rise like walls. They have heard sailors speak of ships swallowed by storms and travellers lost without a trace. A mortal can fight another mortal, but how does a mortal fight the sea? That question remains unanswered. As night approaches, the crew prepares to rest. The stars appear one by one. The same stars that guided sailors for generations. The same stars that watched Odysseus leave Ithaca. The same stars that watched Troy burn. The same stars that watched the Cyclops lose his eye. The universe above remains silent. Ancient Greeks often looked upward for signs. The movement of the heavens shaped calendars, navigation, festivals, and rituals. The night sky was not empty. It was a map, a clock, and sometimes a place where mortals imagined the presence of the divine. Tonight, the stars offer no clear message. No warning appears. No prophecy is spoken. Only silence. And perhaps that silence is its own mystery, because fate in Greek stories often does not announce itself. It arrives quietly. A decision, a word, a moment of pride, a name spoken across water. Hours later, the sailors sleep. Odysseus remains awake. He stands near the bow, watching the waves. You can imagine what moves through his thoughts. Does he regret speaking? Does he replay the moment when the Cyclops asked his name? Does he imagine another ending? One where he remained nobody. One where the ship simply sailed away. Or does he believe the same thing many heroes believe, that glory requires risk? No one can know. The Odyssey never reduces him to a single emotion. He is a man between worlds, a warrior who wants peace, a king who wants simplicity, a strategist who sometimes ignores his own strategy, a mortal who wants to return home but continues making choices that lengthen the road. Before dawn, another sign appears. The wind changes. The sea becomes strangely quiet. The sails loosen. The ship slows. The men wake. They look around. No storm approaches. No enemy ship follows. Only stillness. An old sailor whispers that the gods sometimes make the sea quiet before revealing their intentions. Another says nothing. He simply touches the wooden rail of the ship, as though feeling whether it is still real. The uncertainty remains. Perhaps the calm means nothing. Perhaps it is only a pause between winds. But after the Cyclops, everyone has learned the same lesson. The most dangerous moments are not always loud. Sometimes danger arrives in silence. The ship drifts beneath the stars. Behind you lies the island of the Cyclops. Ahead lies the unknown sea. And somewhere beneath those waves, Poseidon has heard the prayer of his son. The calm sea does not last. Morning returns. But the memory of the previous night remains aboard the ships. The men move quietly. There is no celebration now. No one tells stories of victory. The cave has become something more complicated than a tale of triumph. It is a reminder that a clever plan can save lives, and a reminder that a single careless moment can place those same lives in danger again. Odysseus knows this, even if he does not speak of it. He stands near the stern, watching the distance where the Cyclops island has disappeared. The horizon is empty, but emptiness does not mean safety. In Greek thought, the unseen world was always close. Gods watched from mountains, spirits lingered near rivers and forests, divine forces moved through storms, dreams, and unexpected events. The sea itself belonged to Poseidon. Every sailor understood that. The ocean could carry a traveller home, or it could erase him completely. The crew continues forward. Yet the moment when Odysseus called back to Polyphemus remains. It becomes impossible to forget because it reveals something hidden beneath the hero's intelligence, a desire to be known. During the escape, Odysseus had become nobody. The name protected him, the name saved him, but a hero cannot easily remain invisible. The very qualities that create heroic identity, fame, reputation, remembrance depend upon being recognized. The ancient Greeks called this pursuit of honor and reputation a powerful force among warriors. A great deed performed without witnesses could feel incomplete because stories carried a person's existence beyond their lifetime. Odysseus wanted the world to know. He had defeated the Cyclops. He had survived where others would have died. He had outsmarted a creature who seemed impossible to overcome. But the world does not always reward the desire to be remembered. Sometimes memory carries consequences. As the ship travels farther away, the crew begins discussing what may happen next. Some fear Poseidon's anger. Others believe the gods may still favour Odysseus because he has survived so much. Both views are possible. Greek myths often show the gods as powerful but complex. They are not simply rewards and punishments. They have emotions, relationships, loyalties, and conflicts. Poseidon is not angry because Odysseus defeated a monster alone. He is angry because that monster is his son. Family bonds among gods could be as powerful as those among humans, perhaps even more so. Polyphemus had been wounded, humiliated, changed forever. His prayer was not the complaint of an enemy defeated in battle. It was the cry of a son asking his father for justice. The thought returns to you. What did Polyphemus feel when he realized nobody had a name? The giant had been defeated by someone he considered insignificant, a small mortal, a stranger, a man who entered his home and turned his own habits against him. Perhaps the greatest injury was not the loss of sight. Perhaps it was the loss of certainty. Polyphemus believed nothing weaker could challenge him. Then weakness became strength. The wine he did not understand, the language he misunderstood, the wooden staff he could not prevent, the sheep he trusted. Everything ordinary became part of his defeat. That is one reason the story remained powerful for generations. It is not simply about a giant and a hero. It is about how intelligence can change the balance between the powerful and the vulnerable. But intelligence alone is not enough. The Odyssey repeatedly asks another question. What happens when the clever person cannot control himself? That question follows Odysseus onto the sea. As evening arrives, the ships move beneath a sky filled with stars. The men prepare another quiet meal. No one speaks loudly. They have learned that survival requires humility. A sailor near the fire tells a story about a traveller who ignored a warning from the gods and suffered for his pride. Another responds that perhaps all heroes are guilty of the same thing. They seek greatness, then greatness becomes a burden. Odysseus listens. Perhaps he hears himself in the story. Perhaps he does not. Later that night he dreams. In the dream he stands again before the cave. But the cave is empty. No Cyclops waits inside. No sheep move through the entrance. Only a voice echoes from the darkness. It asks a simple question. Who are you? Odysseus reaches for his answer. He says his name. The cave shakes. The sea rises. He wakes before dawn. Was it a message? A warning? Or simply the mind returning to an unfinished moment? No one can know. But dreams in ancient stories often reveal truths that waking people avoid. Perhaps Odysseus is being reminded that names are powerful. A name can save. A name can destroy. A name can become a prayer carried across the ocean. The next days of sailing bring new challenges, but the Cyclops remains with the crew, not as a physical enemy. As a memory, the cave has become a lesson. The olive stake has become a symbol. The word nobody has become a story. And the name Odysseus has become something else. A challenge thrown toward the gods. The sea stretches endlessly before you. Days pass after the escape from the Cyclops. Yet the memory of that night remains as vivid as the fire that burned inside the cave. Some experiences do not fade with distance. They travel with you. The ship moves beneath changing skies. Some mornings arrive bright and peaceful, with sunlight spreading across calm waters. Other days bring grey clouds, restless waves, and the distant sound of thunder beyond the horizon. But even when the sea is quiet, the men feel that something has changed. The adventure with Polyphemus was supposed to be finished. The giant was defeated. The cave was left behind. The ship escaped. Yet stories, especially stories shaped by fate, rarely end when the immediate danger disappears. Sometimes the wound left behind becomes the beginning of another chapter, and for Polyphemus, the wound has become a memory that reaches back farther than the night you entered his cave. Long before Odysseus arrived on that island, the Cyclops had received a prophecy. The prophet Telemus, son of Eurymus, was remembered among ancient traditions as a seer who understood signs hidden from ordinary sight. He had warned Polyphemus that one day he would lose his eye. The details of the prophecy were simple. The meaning was not. This is one of the mysteries that makes Greek mythology so enduring. Prophecies are often true, yet they are rarely understood correctly. Mortals hear the words but imagine the wrong shape of their fulfillment. A king hears he will be defeated by an enemy and believes he knows where the enemy will come from. A warrior hears he will die in battle, and assumes the battlefield will be where fate finds him. A monster hears he will lose his eye and imagines a certain kind of opponent. But destiny does not always arrive in the form people expect. Polyphemus probably imagined strength. Perhaps he imagined another giant. Perhaps a warrior carrying a weapon powerful enough to match his own. Perhaps someone who looked like a threat. Instead, fate arrived quietly. A shipwrecked traveller. A cup of wine. A false name. A piece of olive wood. Nobody. This is the irony that ancient audiences would have appreciated. The prophecy was not defeated because Polyphemus misunderstood it. The misunderstanding was part of how it came true. You can imagine the moment after the escape, when the Cyclops sits alone near the entrance of his cave. The sheep are gone. The strangers are gone. The eye that connected him to the world is gone. Only the mountain remains. The same mountain that had protected him now surrounds him with silence. Perhaps he thinks of Telemus. Perhaps he remembers the warning. Perhaps he wonders whether he could have changed anything. Greek myths often explore this painful question. Can mortals escape fate? Or do their attempts to escape become the very actions that fulfill it? The surviving traditions do not always answer clearly. Some stories suggest destiny is fixed. Others suggest choices matter, even if the final shape of events cannot be avoided. The Odyssey lives between these ideas. Odysseus makes choices constantly. His intelligence matters. His courage matters. His mistakes matter. Yet larger forces move around him. The gods, the sea, fate, memory. As the fleet continues, the men speak less about Polyphemus. Perhaps they are tired of fear. Perhaps they are trying to move forward. But Odysseus cannot completely leave the encounter behind, because he now understands something dangerous. The story of the Cyclops will outlive the event itself. Men will tell it. Singers will repeat it. Generations will remember that Odysseus defeated a giant. And with every telling, his fame will grow. This is what he wanted. But fame is not always a gift. Ancient Greeks understood that glory could attract admiration and envy, honor and danger. A famous person became visible, and visibility could draw the attention of gods. The same reputation that lifts a hero can also make him vulnerable. A quiet night arrives. The crew rests beneath the stars. The ocean is calm. Odysseus looks upward. Perhaps he remembers Ithaca. Perhaps he imagines Penelope waiting in the palace halls. Perhaps he sees his son Telemachus growing older without him. The thought of home remains the strongest force guiding him. Not treasure, not conquest, not glory. Home. Yet every choice he makes on the road home shapes the journey that follows. The Cyclops episode began with curiosity. It continued with courage. It survived through intelligence. But it changed forever because of one final decision. A decision to speak. A decision to reveal. A decision to turn nobody back into Odysseus. Far behind the ship, beneath another sky, Polyphemus remembers that name. And he raises his voice once more. Not in confusion. Not in anger alone, but in prayer. The prayer of a son. The prayer that will carry across the sea. The sea grows darker as evening approaches. The ships continue their journey. But the men are no longer simply travellers moving toward home. They are sailors carrying a story. And stories have a way of changing the people who carry them. You have crossed the waters beyond Troy. You have survived strange islands. You have watched men lose themselves among the lotus eaters. You have entered the home of a creature who knew no laws of hospitality. You have escaped by becoming nobody. And now, somewhere behind you, a prayer is moving across the waves, not carried by a ship, not carried by a messenger, carried by the power of a god who hears. On the distant shore, Polyphemus stands beneath the open sky. The evening wind moves through the mountain grass. The flock is scattered. The cave is quiet. The place where strangers once sat around a fire is empty. The Cyclops raises his hands. His face turns upward, though darkness has already replaced the sight he once possessed. He calls to Poseidon, "Father, Lord of the deep waters, ruler of storms, hear me." The prayer is not only about revenge, it is about humiliation. Polyphemus was not defeated by a greater physical force. He was defeated by a smaller being who used the very things the Cyclops dismissed. Language, planning, patience, human cooperation. His strength could move mountains, but it could not protect him from a thought, a strategy, a name, and now that name has become the centre of his prayer. Odysseus, the son of Laertes, the man who blinded him, the man who escaped, the man who refused to disappear. Ancient audiences understood the importance of such a moment. In Greek religion, prayers were not casual expressions. They were acts of communication between mortal and divine worlds. A person who called upon a god did so within a relationship shaped by family, ritual, sacrifice, and tradition. Polyphemus is not simply shouting into the sky. He is calling upon his father. The connection between them matters. The gods of Greek mythology are often imagined as distant powers, but they also possess relationships, loyalties, and emotions. Poseidon is not hearing the complaint of a stranger. He is hearing the suffering of his own child, and that changes everything. Polyphemus asks for one thing, that Odysseus never return home, or if destiny requires that he eventually reach Ithaca, let the journey be long. Let him arrive late. Let him arrive alone. Let him find suffering waiting for him. Let his home no longer feel like home. The words move into the wind. The sea receives them. And somewhere far away, Odysseus continues sailing. He does not hear the prayer. He does not see the darkness gathering beyond the horizon. That is one of the quiet tragedies of Greek myth. Mortals often move through life unaware of the forces their actions have awakened. A person speaks. A promise is broken. A boundary is crossed, and only later does the consequence arrive. The Odyssey is filled with such moments. The war at Troy began from a single act of desire. The journey home is delayed by countless choices. The Cyclops episode begins with curiosity and ends with a curse. The chain of events is almost impossible to separate. Historians and literary scholars continue to discuss how ancient audiences understood these ideas. Some view the Odyssey as a story about divine punishment. Others see it as an exploration of human choices and their consequences. Still, others see both ideas working together. The poem allows uncertainty. Perhaps that is why it remains alive. You return to the ship. The crew continues forward. But the sea begins changing. The wind becomes unpredictable. Clouds gather more often. The waves seem heavier. No single storm announces itself. No single moment explains the change. Instead, the atmosphere shifts slowly, like a person entering a room after an argument. Something unseen has arrived. The sailors notice. They speak quietly. They make offerings. They remember the gods. A small sacrifice is prepared on deck. The fire struggles against the wind. Smoke rises unevenly. Again, there is no clear answer. No voice from above. No sign that the gods have accepted or rejected the offering. Only uncertainty. And perhaps uncertainty is the condition of every mortal journey. You cannot know every consequence before making a choice. You cannot see every wave before crossing the sea. You cannot hear every prayer spoken against you from a distant shore. Odysseus looks ahead. Somewhere beyond the horizon lies Ithaca, the island he has dreamed of for years, the place where his name should bring comfort. But the prayer of Polyphemus has already changed the meaning of the journey. Returning home will no longer be simply difficult. It will become a test of endurance. Because now the sea itself has an enemy. And the enemy is not another warrior, not another king, not another monster. It is the god who commands the waters beneath the ship. The prayer disappears into the wind. For a moment, nothing changes. The sea remains the sea. The ship remains beneath the stars. The men continue rowing. Perhaps this is how danger often arrives in the stories of mortals. Not with a sudden announcement, not with a visible enemy standing before you, but quietly, a word spoken, a promise made, a prayer offered. And then time passes. The traveller begins to believe nothing happened, until the world changes. Behind you, the island of the Cyclops has become only a memory. The cliffs have vanished. The cave has disappeared beyond the horizon, the place where the olive stake burned, where Polyphemus screamed, where nobody defeated a giant. Now exists only in the minds of those who were there. The crew attempts to return to ordinary life. They mend sails. They prepare meals. They sleep when they can, but sailors rarely forget the sea. Every horizon hides a possibility. Every cloud carries uncertainty. Every calm moment can become a warning. One evening, the air becomes strangely still. The wind falls away. The sails loosen. The ship slows. The men look around. The ocean stretches in every direction. No land, no enemy, no storm, only silence. Then slowly, the atmosphere changes. The water beneath the ship begins moving differently. The waves rise, not violently at first, almost gently, as though the sea itself is waking. The older sailors recognize the feeling. They have felt it before. A storm does not always arrive as thunder. Sometimes it begins with a change in the air, a pressure, a heaviness, a sense that something larger than human intention has entered the world. Ancient Greeks would have understood such moments through the presence of the gods. The sea was not merely a physical place. It was a realm of divine power. Poseidon ruled beneath its surface. He carried the trident. He shook the earth. He could raise waves high enough to destroy ships and humble kings. The sailors begin making offerings. They call upon the gods. They remember their families. They think of the homes waiting beyond the water. Odysseus watches the horizon. Perhaps he remembers the Cyclops' prayer. Perhaps he does not yet understand how far the consequences may reach. Then the wind returns. Suddenly. The sails fill. The ship moves forward. For a moment, relief returns. But the sea is unpredictable. A distant rumble moves across the water. The clouds gather. And then a wave rises. The ship climbs. Wood groans. Ropes pull tight. Men grab the sides. The wave lifts the vessel as though it were a small piece of driftwood. Then, far behind you, another movement appears. A shape rising from the sea. Not a creature. Not a ship. A stone. Thrown from the shore. You are already too far away to see Polyphemus clearly. But the Cyclops has heard the sound of your oars, the voices of the crew, the movement of the ship. Blindness has taken his sight, but not his rage. He reaches down, finds a rock, and throws. The stone travels through the air. For a brief moment, it seems impossible that something so large could move so far. Then it strikes the sea. The impact is like a mountain falling. Water explodes upward. The ship rises on the wave. Men cry out. The deck tilts. Supplies slide across the wood. The carefully arranged balance of the vessel disappears. You grip whatever you can. The sea surrounds you. The storm of Poseidon may not have fully arrived, but the warning is clear. The world is no longer allowing you to leave easily, yet somehow the ship survives. The wave pushes you, not backward, forward. The same sea that threatens to destroy you also carries you away. This contradiction reflects something central to the Odyssey. The forces that challenge Odysseus are often the same forces that move him toward his destiny. The sea separates him from home, but without the sea, he would never reach home. The gods test him through the very world he must travel. The crew fights to regain control. The ship steadies. The men look toward Odysseus. No one speaks. They do not need to. Everyone understands what almost happened. A little more distance, a little less luck, a slightly larger stone, and the journey could have ended there. The Cyclops would have won without seeing. The prophecy would have taken a final form. Odysseus would have become a story of a man who escaped a cave only to disappear beneath the waves. But he survives. Again. And perhaps that is part of his tragedy. Survival can create confidence. Confidence can create risk. Risk can create another survival. The cycle continues. That night the crew sleeps uneasily. The sea is calmer. The stars return. But no one forgets the sound of the stone, because it carries a message. The danger from the Cyclops is not only behind them, it has entered the journey itself. A man escaped from a cave, but he didn't escape the consequences of the cave. The morning after the great wave, the sea appears almost peaceful again. This is one of the strange qualities of the ocean. It can rage like a living creature beneath dark clouds, then return to stillness as though nothing happened. The ships move onward. The men repair what they can. Broken ropes are tied. Loose boards are secured. Damaged supplies are counted. Every small task reminds you how fragile the journey truly is. A ship is only wood. A sail is only cloth. A crew is only a group of human beings trusting themselves to a world far larger than they are. And yet these fragile things continue. That is part of the mystery of ancient seafaring. The Greeks who crossed the Mediterranean understood both fear and dependence. The sea could separate families, destroy kingdoms, and erase entire fleets. But it could also create trade, friendship, exploration, and stories that lasted for centuries. The voyage itself was a test, not only of strength, of endurance. Eventually, the ships returned toward the island where the rest of the fleet waits. The sight of familiar sails brings relief. The men who remained behind had watched the horizon for signs of your return. They did not know what happened beyond the channel. They did not know about the cave, the Cyclops, or the impossible escape. Now the surviving ship approaches. The crews reunite. Hands are raised. Names are called. But again, celebration is mixed with sorrow. The missing men are remembered. Their places beside the fires remain empty. Their voices are gone. In Greek tradition, remembering the dead was an important responsibility. A person's name continued through those who spoke it. The heroes of epic poetry were preserved because someone carried their stories forward. The men lost in the Cyclops cave will not return, but they will not disappear completely. Their memory becomes part of Odysseus's journey. The fleet prepares a meal. The captured sheep are brought ashore. Fires are built beneath the open sky. The scent of roasting meat fills the air. For a short time, life feels normal again. Yet Odysseus knows that something has changed. The sacrifice begins at sunset. A chosen animal is prepared. The ritual follows ancient customs. Prayers are spoken. The fire rises. Smoke moves upward toward the heavens. The men hope for protection. They hope for guidance. They hope the gods will accept the offering and allow the journey home to continue. But the heavens remain quiet. No thunder answers. No clear sign appears. Only smoke drifting into the evening air. For some, this silence would be unsettling. For others, it might simply mean the gods remain beyond human understanding. Ancient Greek religion was filled with uncertainty. People prayed, sacrificed, interpreted signs, and sought guidance, but they never possessed complete knowledge of divine intentions. Even heroes lived within that uncertainty. Odysseus watches the flames. Perhaps he thinks about the moment when he stood before Polyphemus. Perhaps he thinks about the choice to reveal his name. Perhaps he wonders whether the sacrifice can repair what was broken. But some actions cannot be undone. A spoken word cannot return. A prayer cannot be unheard. A name cannot be hidden again. That evening, a quiet conversation begins among the sailors. Some defend Odysseus. They say any man would want his enemy to know who defeated him. Others disagree. They remember the warnings. They remember the danger. They say survival should have been enough. Both sides understand him. And perhaps that is why the debate continues, because Odysseus represents something deeply human, the desire to survive, and the desire to matter. Those two desires often move together, but sometimes they pull in opposite directions. A person can save themselves by remaining unseen, but the heart still wants to be recognized. The ancient world understood this struggle. Kings built monuments. Warriors sought songs. Families preserved names. Memory was a form of immortality, but immortality always carried a price. The next morning, the fleet prepares to leave again. The ships are loaded. The fires are extinguished. The island becomes another place left behind. Odysseus looks once more toward the distant horizon. Somewhere beyond it lies Ithaca. Somewhere beyond it waits the life he has fought to reclaim. Yet now the journey carries another burden. The anger of Poseidon. The memory of Polyphemus. The uncertainty of fate. Before the ships depart, Odysseus offers one more prayer. Not for glory. Not for victory. For home. That simple desire remains the strongest part of him. Beneath all the stories, beneath the clever plans, beneath the reputation, there is a man who wants to return to the people he loves. The sails rise. The ships move. The island fades. And the story of the Cyclops becomes something carried forward through memory, not just a tale of a giant defeated, a tale of choices, a tale of consequences, a tale of a man who escaped the cave, but discovered that some shadows follow even beneath the open sky. The ships continue westward. The island of the Cyclops is now far behind you, hidden beyond the curve of the earth and the endless movement of the sea. Yet the encounter remains close, carried not by distance but by memory. Some journeys are measured in miles, others are measured in the changes they create within a person. When you first saw the distant smoke rising from the unknown shore, the Cyclops was only a mystery, a question. Who lives beyond the water? Now the answer has become part of the history of Odysseus. A giant, a cave, a wounded eye, a false name, a curse. The story appears simple when spoken quickly. A hero meets a monster. The hero escapes. The monster loses, but ancient audiences knew there was something deeper beneath the surface. The cave of Polyphemus was not only a place of danger, it was a place where different worlds collided. On one side stood the world of Odysseus, a world of ships, alliances, rituals, laws, families, and shared customs. A world where strangers could become guests, where meals created bonds, where names connected people to ancestors and descendants. On the other side stood Polyphemus, a being who lived alone, a shepherd with no city, no assembly, no marketplace, no neighbours sharing laws. He possessed abundance, milk, cheese, animals, shelter. Yet he existed outside the social order that Greek audiences considered essential to human life. This contrast explains why the Cyclops episode became so powerful. The danger was not simply physical. The danger was entering a world where familiar rules no longer worked. Odysseus expected hospitality. Polyphemus offered none. Odysseus expected respect for the gods. Polyphemus rejected them. Odysseus expected words to create understanding. Instead, words became weapons. The encounter asks a difficult question. What happens when two different ways of living meet and neither side understands the other? Ancient storytellers often explored this boundary between civilization and wilderness. The wilderness was not always evil. The unknown could contain beauty, resources, and mystery, but it could also contain dangers that human customs could not control. The Cyclops represents that uncertainty. He is frightening because he is both familiar and unfamiliar. He tends animals. He prepares food. He has a home. Yet he destroys the very traditions that make a home meaningful. This is why the moment when he rejects Zeus is so important. The issue is not simply that he is powerful. Power exists everywhere. Kings have power. Warriors have power. Gods have power. The issue is that Polyphemus believes power removes all obligation. He believes strength means he does not need rules, and the story suggests that such belief carries consequences. Yet the Odyssey also refuses to present Odysseus as perfect. That is perhaps the most interesting part of his victory. He defeats the Cyclops through intelligence, but he also creates future danger through pride. He understands the value of deception. He understands the importance of patience. He understands that survival sometimes requires becoming nobody. But when safety arrives, he struggles to remain silent. The hero who mastered language becomes trapped by his own need to speak. The man who hid his name cannot resist revealing it. This contradiction gives Odysseus his humanity. He is not simply the smartest person in the story. He is someone constantly negotiating between wisdom and desire, between caution and glory, between returning home quietly and being remembered forever. Historians continue to debate how much of the Cyclops tradition may preserve memories of ancient Mediterranean fears. Some researchers have suggested that Greek sailors encountering unfamiliar cultures, isolated communities, or distant landscapes may have influenced the development of such stories. Others focus more on symbolism. The Cyclops may represent the dangers of isolation, the dangers of arrogance, the danger of believing that strength alone is enough. The surviving evidence cannot reveal exactly how every ancient listener understood the tale. Perhaps different audiences heard different meanings. A sailor might hear a warning about foreign shores. A warrior might hear a lesson about courage. A philosopher might hear a reflection on human nature. A family waiting at home might simply hear the story of a man trying to return, and perhaps that is why the story survives. Because every generation finds a different part of itself within it. The olive stake becomes more than a weapon. It becomes a symbol of intelligence transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. The wine of Meron becomes more than a drink. It becomes a reminder that gifts, memories, and choices can travel farther than expected. The name Nobody becomes more than a trick. It becomes a question. Who are we when the things that define us are taken away? Odysseus discovered that he could survive without his name, but he also discovered that he could not escape the desire to reclaim it. That desire carried him away from the cave, and it also carried the consequences of the cave with him. The stars appear above the ship. The sea grows quiet. The men sleep. Odysseus remains awake. Perhaps he's thinking of Ithaca. Perhaps of Penelope. Perhaps of the long road still ahead. The Cyclops has become a memory now, but memories are powerful things. They shape choices. They influence dreams. They remind mortals that every victory has a cost, and as the ship moves beneath the endless sky, one truth remains. Odysseus escaped the cave, but the cave changed him forever. The journey continues beneath the stars. The island of the Cyclops disappears completely behind the ships, but some places remain long after they vanish from sight. A battlefield, a childhood home, a place where a decision changed everything. For Odysseus, the cave of Polyphemus becomes one of those places. Years later, when singers tell the story, they will not remember only the violence. They will remember the silence before it, the unknown shore, the distant smoke, the moment curiosity pulled a hero toward danger. They will remember the firelight inside the cave, the enormous stone blocking the entrance, the strange courage of men who knew they were trapped. They will remember the olive wood, the wine, the name Nobody, and they will remember the moment when Odysseus became himself again, because that is the heart of the story, not simply how a man escaped a monster, but how a man struggled with the forces inside himself. Fear, pride, wisdom, desire. The Cyclops was defeated because Odysseus understood something important. Strength is not always the greatest power. A smaller person with patience, intelligence, and imagination can overcome something far greater. This was a lesson ancient Greek audiences valued. The world was filled with uncertainty. Storms could destroy ships, armies could fall, kings could lose everything. But the human mind remained a remarkable gift, the ability to think, to adapt, to endure. Yet the story also carried another lesson. Even the greatest gifts can become dangerous when they are mixed with pride. Odysseus escaped because he knew when to hide. He suffered because he could not always accept being unseen. He became nobody to survive, but he revealed himself because he wanted to be remembered. And perhaps this is why the story has lasted for so many centuries. Because everyone understands that feeling, the desire to matter, the desire for our actions to be recognized, the desire for our names to continue after we're gone. The ancient Greeks believed memory gave a kind of immortality. A person could die, a body could disappear, but a name carried through songs and stories could continue. Odysseus achieved that immortality, but the journey toward it was never simple. His name brought admiration. It also brought danger. The prayer of Polyphemus became part of that story. The curse of Poseidon became part of that story. The long years away from Ithaca became part of that story. And perhaps fate works this way, not as a single road already visible before us, but as a collection of choices, a word spoken, a step taken, a decision made in a moment of uncertainty. The Odyssey does not tell you that heroes never make mistakes. It tells you something more human. Heroes make mistakes too. They simply continue. The sea remains around Odysseus, endless, ancient, moving beneath the same stars that watch the first ships leave Greek shores, the same stars that watch sailors search for new lands, the same stars that watched civilizations rise and disappear, the same stars that watched a man named Odysseus cling beneath a ram in a dark cave, waiting for one impossible chance. Perhaps somewhere on the coast of the Cyclops, the cave still stands in memory. Perhaps the wind still moves through the mountain paths. Perhaps waves still strike the rocks where Polyphemus once called upon his father. The physical world changes, stone breaks, ships disappear, cities become ruins, but stories remain. They travel farther than ships, farther than armies, farther than kings. They cross centuries like invisible currents. And this story reaches us because it speaks about things that never disappear. The fear of the unknown, the hope of returning home, the struggle between wisdom and pride, the fragile distance between victory and consequence. Now the ships move onward. The crew rests. The fires grow low. The sea becomes calm beneath the night sky. Odysseus finally closes his eyes. Perhaps he dreams of Ithaca. Perhaps he sees the familiar hills of home. Perhaps he hears the voices waiting for him after so many years away. The palace halls, the quiet rooms, the people who remember him. The journey is not finished. Many trials still wait beyond the horizon. But for this moment, there is only the gentle movement of the ship, the soft sound of waves touching wood, the quiet breathing of tired sailors, the endless darkness above filled with distant stars. And somewhere between memory and sleep, the name Odysseus continues travelling, not because he was perfect, not because he never failed, but because he was human, a mortal who crossed impossible seas, a man who faced giants, a traveller who searched for home. And as the waves carry the ship farther into the night, the ancient story slowly becomes quieter. The voices fade, the winds soften, the stars remain. The sea remembers his name, and now, beneath that same timeless sky, you can let the story rest.